When out of nowhere, a massive gate split the sky open, pouring terrifying monsters onto the earth. But they were not the only ones arriving. Powerful protectors also emerged, fully capable of striking down these vicious demons. These otherworldly entities stepped right into human lives, disrupting everything. They were called Celestials, and humanity immediately received a warning. Government alerts claimed they had been preparing for this nightmare from the start. Everyone was ordered to stay inside and avoid going out under any circumstances. They had to lock their doors, knowing that help was on the way. After that fateful day, regular everyday humans suddenly began developing wild, supernatural abilities. Their power mirrored the Celestials, driven by an incredibly fierce will to survive. Human resolve proved just as tough as the monsters, unlocking massive power. With this strength to fight back, literally anyone could seize control of their fate. This meant power belonged to those who took it, fueled by the divine foundation. This sacred energy source is split into three distinct, powerful paths. First is the heavenly foundation, held by those who channel sky and earth. The second type belongs to users who can bend nature to their will. They control wood, fire, earth, iron, and water, known as the earthly basis. Finally, the third type belongs to masters who manipulate the human body itself. They use the cosmic energies of the sun, moon, and yin-yang to command the human basis. But then there is a final foundation that defies all these rules entirely. It belongs neither to heaven, earth, nor does it touch the human foundation. These cosmic entities are completely unpredictable, bringing nothing but chaotic trouble. Suddenly, a young guy steps up with a weapon, looking totally energized. It looks like he just took some wild elixir, and honestly, it sounds ridiculous. His power-up is literally nicotine, triggering massive stimulation to his nervous system. This instantly floods his body with dopamine and adrenaline. This chemical rush awakens his powers, and the monster immediately notices the threat. Sensing his bizarre aura, the beast lets out a deafening screech. Our main guy Brian is not about to wait around for it to strike first. He makes a lightning-fast move, throwing himself straight into the action. The violent clash begins as Brian lands a brutal hit, making the beast howl. Sure, one blow won't end this, but it proves his insane combat potential. You see, his powers do not come from heavenly or earthly foundations. It has absolutely nothing to do with standard human abilities either. These wild card users are unpredictable, classified as living catastrophes. They are pure, unadulterated chaos, and trust me, you do not want to cross them. Their power foundation is totally invisible and completely beyond comprehension. Even the most veteran fighters are going to struggle against this cosmic force. Most people in this world rely heavily on their divine-based gifts. In contrast, the non-god entities hold massive superiority and cause endless trouble. They constantly plot to rule the earth, but a wild card has entered the game. A fighter with a bizarre basis that absolutely nobody can make sense of. This guy was born with an ability to consume different chemical substances to unlock his potential, making Brian totally unique. Armed with this catastrophic power, he is ready to achieve the impossible. With extraordinary abilities, he fought against the Celestials, and very quickly he became a true legend. It was obvious since no one had ever seen anything like it before, but let us wind back the clock and see how his story actually began. Back then he worked at a normal factory, constantly exhausted just like all of his colleagues. Slaving away using pure physical strength is never an easy task. Leaving his body unbearably sore every single night like he just survived a real battle, Brian said goodbye to his coworkers, telling them he had to head off. He could not join them for dinner because of some busy personal plans. His friends could not understand what he was eating to stay energized. Even after a brutal shift, he was the only person still packed with energy. Maybe it was those vitamins working their magic on him. His coworkers often saw him popping red ginseng before shifts, now 22 years old. Brian truly believes vitamins are the perfect fix when you run low on physical strength and stamina. His real power is that supplements and medicines actually work way better on him than on normal people. He first noticed this when starting on some nutritional supplements he received from a military buddy. Just 2 simple vitamin pills completely wiped away his exhaustion after a brutal day of manual labor. Popping omega-3 pills cleared his mind instantly and boosted his focus to absolute peak levels. He loved taking full advantage of his bizarre body. Then one day, as he headed toward a local cafe for a tasty snack, a gorgeous girl suddenly walked right up to him. Brian instantly assumed she was about to ask for his phone number like some movie protagonist, but instead this girl told him he looked great and asked if he had a minute to chat. Now, usually in his country, people pulling this routine are either dangerous cults or outright scammers. Annoyed, he just walked away. The girl, Sharon, begged him to listen to her, but Brian just started running. He never thought he would actually encounter cult recruiters in person, but life has other plans. He absolutely detests anything to do with celestials or weird sects, all because of his father. The older man was actually a hardworking, stable guy who obsessed over creating a miracle medicine to help him ascend to celestial status. After telling his wife, he suddenly quit his job and retreated to his parents' quiet village home. There, he mixed random medical ingredients and tested them on himself, which led to several emergency room visits with severe stomach pain. Then one day, he vanished in an unknown direction after failing to achieve his crazy goal. He left his abandoned family nothing but a note promising to return once he succeeded. But 20 long years have passed since that day. Brian was barely a kid back then, leaving his mother to struggle all alone after his father vanished. If only the man had just taken normal vitamins and supplements like Brian, instead of trying to engineer some magical cure. Right as Brian steps outside the convenience store, a weird flying object catches his eye. He stares up, completely unable to identify the bizarre sight. It looks exactly like a real UFO. Before he walked inside the shop, the sky was completely clear. This definitely isn't some cheap movie set or CGI projection rigged up by a camera crew. This looks like a genuine high-tech spaceship, and it is. Something bizarre is happening. At first, everyone thought it was just an earthquake, but then they saw a massive, gaping crater tearing through the street. Within seconds, a colossal red beast began clawing its way up from the abyss. Definitely not the kind of terrifying view you want to see first thing in the morning, especially when you are just trying to enjoy a nice, warm coffee you just bought. This creature does not look friendly. In fact, it looks downright murderous. It clearly has absolutely zero interest in making nice with him. Our boy realizes he needs to book it immediately, just like the panicked crowd running for their lives. But suddenly, the fuel of his energy drink kicks in. All that sugar and high-dose caffeine hit his bloodstream all at once. It floods his system with raw power, triggering his nervous system. Suddenly, time slows down, and everything around him stretches out into slow motion. His reflexes sharpen to an absolutely absurd degree. The chaotic crowd and the flailing monster look like they are moving in slow motion. This is totally wild for a guy who never had any powers. Then again, he never actually needed them until now. Brian realizes that with this insane speed, he might actually stand a chance. And staring at these ugly, destructive monsters, he instantly starts to absolutely despise them. In this state, he can easily trade blows with them without backing down an inch. Driven by sudden adrenaline, he moves without a shred of hesitation. Of course, he still has no idea how to use this power. He needs actual time to figure out his physical limits and understand his weaknesses. But even this basic speed is enough to crush minor monsters. Just surviving his first real battle is already a massive win. While the rest of the street is screaming and fleeing for their lives, Brian stands his ground, completely unafraid. But standing out has its own consequences when you are surrounded by hungry beasts. The other monsters spot a genuine threat and instantly pack up to swarm him. He realizes there is no running. It is time to show them who really owns the street. Dodging and weaving, he starts landing brutal strikes from every blind spot. He quickly forces them to respect him. Though more monsters swarm in, he has plenty of juice. To his heightened senses, their movements are incredibly sluggish and easy to read. He casually slips past their heavy claws and delivers a series of devastating counterpunches. In 10 minutes, 10 red beasts lie broken on the concrete. He thinks he is safe, but wait until you see what crawls out next. Suddenly, the asphalt cracks as a massive, towering red giant emerges from the shadows. Running is not an option anymore. He has to fight. Maybe this giant is just a slow, clumsy sponge, or maybe it is a complete nightmare. This towering red goblin might easily be 10 times stronger than the trash mobs. Then the worst possible thing happens. The energy drink is wearing off. He is crashing hard. Now he has some incredibly serious problems. Nearby, the terrified citizens are still trying to process the unfolding apocalypse. Panic-stricken people pile into a nearby shop, praying the glass doors will hold them back. Absolute terror has gripped the entire street, and nobody has a single clue how to escape. It makes sense they are just regular folks, praying for the military to save them. But those hope-filled doors shatter instantly, giving the beasts a free pass inside. In any normal situation, facing certain death forces you to act fast. Your basic survival instincts switch on, pushing your brain to its absolute limit. But seeing a massive red demon towering right in front of him changes everything. It looks straight out of a horror movie, completely shattering reality. Luckily, our guy already knows his hidden trick and sparks up a cigarette. Instantly, his system registers the sudden rush of nicotine. The chemical trigger activates, flooding his veins with pure power. His mind-blowing abilities awaken, returning to him all at once. Armed with this insane rush, he is ready to show this beast who is boss. Brian feels a massive wave of confidence washing over him. He is not stopping here, taking another deep drag from his cigarette. The extra boost keeps his nervous system running on pure overdrive. Adrenaline pumps through him, supercharging every muscle in his body. This wild chemical cocktail grants him unreal speed and some truly legendary endurance. The young fighter quickly starts loving this power. He starts absolutely unloading on the giant monster with zero hesitation. Honestly, he feels just like an overpowered video game hero. It is everything he ever dreamed of, but real-life monsters actually fight back. This fight is no exception, and the demon is not going down easily. Annoyed, the giant red beast roars loudly, desperate to get some payback. He swings a massive, heavy right hand that connects with terrifying accuracy. The impact is brutal, reminding Brian that he is definitely not a god. He can still bleed, and this ugly opponent is deceptively strong. Now it is a chaotic slugfest where the faster puncher takes all. Luckily, with that nicotine still pumping, Brian holds the ultimate speed advantage. He wastes absolutely zero time exploiting this edge to turn the tide. He grabs the monster and begins violently slamming its head into the concrete. It is a savage sight, but this world is a concrete jungle now. It is kill or be killed, and smoking is his only lifeline. With the danger passing, his thoughts immediately drift back to his mom. He desperately prays that she has somehow survived this nightmare. But getting distracted is a rookie mistake, and he completely forgets the demon. That mistake costs him instantly as the beast slowly starts to stir. It rises back up, fully loaded and ready for round 2. The tables turn completely, and Brian gets his own head smashed hard. It feels like a watermelon splitting, but our boy is not done yet. Unlike this beast, Brian possesses some truly cheat-like powers. He uses them just in time to block the demon's incoming fatal strike. Countering with a fierce counterattack, he saves himself from certain death. A heavy strike straight to the chest finally knocks the beast cold. But this brutal clash has drained absolutely every ounce of his energy. He lies there paralyzed, eventually waking up to the sounds of screaming. Nearby, terrified survivors are desperately running from even more oncoming beasts. Of course, only Brian holds such extraordinary, cheat-like power. Regular folks have no chance. He stares at these beasts, baffled. Where did they even come from, and why target the weak? It makes him absolutely furious, because he completely loathes bullies. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto a massive beast cornering a helpless victim. A heavyset man is trapped, trembling and completely unable to save himself. That is the absolute limit. Brian's sanity completely snaps. The beast looms close, ready to turn the poor guy into a quick breakfast. But right then, eyes turn to the sky as something descends from above. It looks almost like a glowing angel dropping down. Everyone is stunned. But as the dust settles, they realize it is actually a human. This figure in a white coat pulls a card and hurls it straight at the monsters. Instantly, a massive crackle of blue electricity erupts across the street. The red beast shrieks in agony as the current rips through its body. Miraculously, the civilians are untouched. They realize a savior has finally arrived. Standing just feet away, Brian watches the whole impossible display unfold. He stares at the mysterious savior, completely unable to process what is happening. Who is this, and where did they get such unreal power? It is like watching a real superhero. But as the bright glare fades, Brian gets a much closer look. Standing right, there is a gorgeous girl with hair as white as fresh snow. She walks over, her sharp eyes scanning him as if trying to read his very soul. Having witnessed him wiping out a horde of monsters with zero training, now she has to know what he really is. Stepping closer, she demands to test his true strength and hidden potential. She orders him to hold out his hand, but Brian just stands there, totally clueless. He just gapes at her like an idiot. Annoyed, she grabs his wrist herself, forcing her own energy straight into his palm. She probes deep into his spirit, desperately searching for the exact source of his crazy power. But it is not heavenly nor earthly, and it definitely is not human. Her instincts scream that she is looking at something utterly catastrophic. It is a chaotic, terrifying force that absolutely should not exist inside any mortal shell. How could a clueless idiot be carrying a world-ending power like this? If this is real, there is no way she can let him walk away alive. A ticking time bomb like him will eventually destroy everything in his path. She prepares to vaporize him on the spot, but then he suddenly speaks up. He smiles and thanks her for saving everyone, rambling about how he can never repay her. His genuine innocence catches her off guard, freezing her lethal intent instantly. Hesitating, she begins tracing rapid symbols in the air with her fingers. A glowing blue sphere of incredibly dense, pure energy suddenly forms between her palms. Whispering an apology for suppressing his potential, she presses the core into his chest. Bitter cold, his throat freezes as the energy floods down. Suddenly, his entire body warps as his bone and muscle start to violently shift. She explains that this artifact is meant to lock down his rampant power. Normally, this ancient magic is reserved for binding the most vicious, uncontrollable demons in existence. Right now, though, this seal is the only thing keeping his body from exploding. Future, his wild powers might tear him apart and plunge the world into chaos. His body feels unbelievably heavy right now, but soon he will see it was for the best. She begged him not to hate her for doing this, hoping they might meet again. Brian tried to hold her back, desperate to ask just a few more questions. But she vanished instantly, leaving him completely in the dark. Why did she give him this medicine, and what was that strange basis? Only later did the truth start sinking in. This whole mystery revolved around his powers. If those incredible new talents had not kicked in, he would be dead. His skull would have been crushed on the pavement hours ago. Finally, he finds strength. Brian finally drags himself up and stumbles into the nearest convenience store. He grabs a hangover cure and downs it instantly to settle his system. He needs this cheap stimulant just to keep his body from collapsing under the strain. Slowly, the heavy detox kicks in, soothing his liver and kidneys. Limping back home, he brings a whole stash of recovery drinks with him. He is not even sure they will work, but his mind drifts back to her. She warned him about a coming catastrophe, an absolute disaster. That core she handed over was meant to change his body and awaken his true potential. But he decides to worry about that later. Right now, he has to find his mother. Wait, right then, his phone buzzes with a terrifying message. The news is grim. Monsters might be popping up in other cities too. The emergency alert warns everyone to stay indoors and find a safe shelter. It instructs them to download an official app and register their details. He quickly notices the app seems rushed, like it was thrown together overnight. To complete the registration, the system demands a quick scan of his identity card. After holding up his card, the verification process completes almost instantly. A pop-up confirms he is being redirected straight to the main page. Suddenly, glowing red runes float into the air right in front of him. He figures this bizarre vision has to be from the medicine that girl gave him. The interface announces that a divine basis has been confirmed inside his body. The analysis of his core begins immediately, leaving Brian completely dazed. But he can guess this crazy phenomenon is definitely tied back to her. If his newfound power defies all logic, this is precisely what she meant. Right on cue, a sudden wave of nausea hits his entire body. Weakness floods his limbs, and he hates that this is happening right now. This agony has to be the effect of that mysterious blue core. Desperate, he grabs his remaining bottles and chugs them as fast as possible. The nausea slowly subsides. Turns out those cheap drinks actually work. Meanwhile, the scan continues, preparing to reveal his specific power type. The system updates him. Brian can feel his heart pounding with raw excitement. He might not understand the details, but he knows this is massive. The core glows with a brilliant blue, a color representing raw, empty energy. This tone usually symbolizes wood, but in rare instances, it channels water. Out of all the mysterious elements in this world, this is top tier. Suddenly, Brian feels the raw power of the stimulant kick in. A potent chemical rushes through his veins, initiating a total cellular shift. A blue nucleus of empty energy. This empty blue energy was part of the core that the celestial being had given to Brian earlier. Fortunately, the hangover cure helped neutralize the toxic ingredients of the core, leaving only empty blue energy. Inside his body, right after that, strange things began to happen to our protagonist, and he immediately noticed something was off. His body temperature was rising rapidly, making him realize that he needed to wait a while for his system to adapt to these changes, so he found a comfortable sitting position, looking exactly like those meditation poses from the movies. Up until now, he believed his foundation was completely unexplainable, but then the system began mentioning something about an earthly foundation. It informed him that his divine foundation was earthly, with a highly developed wood energy, meaning he needs to train this specific ability properly. Of course, this whole situation is bizarre because that celestial woman gave him medicine thinking his core was entirely unexplainable. Now, he doesn't understand what's happening, but he can feel the internal poison is gone. Maybe leftover traces of her medicine remained in his system and altered his natural abilities. Either way, this is a good thing because if he really possessed an unclassifiable foundation, he probably would have to run away. Shortly after, the president finally appeared on the breaking news. And you can bet his upcoming speech was going to shake the entire nation. 10,000 years ago, our world was a vastly different place. Mighty beasts we now call monsters roamed the earth back then, while beings from other dimensions crossed galaxies to reach our world. During those dark times, humans were brutally exploited without any rights. Life was an absolute nightmare for them, yet, in the midst of that chaos, some chosen individuals awakened a divine foundation, gaining an incredible hidden power. This newfound energy increased their lifespans and boosted their endurance. Suddenly, the world changed into a place where anyone could acquire this strength. These empowered warriors were later called Celestials, and they sacrificed their lives to seal the gates, ensuring that humanity could safely thrive on this earth. Their heroic deeds were passed down through generations in myths and legends, all while they quietly continued to guard those gates. They kept protecting us as human civilization developed, or at least they did until very recently. Now, these non-gods will be trolling assigned city sectors to help the government maintain peace and order. These Celestials are highly trained and authorized to enforce the law. Meanwhile, Brian was busy studying his system screen, trying to figure out how to match his skills to his current physical abilities. Moments later, a massive stream of information popped up in front of him. It was a complete breakdown of his new skill set, showing 3 main energy centers. In his body, the upper, middle, and lower, that is where he feels the heat. With steady training, he should start to feel warmth in those areas. Once that warmth circulates through all 3 zones, he can take the next step. Brian can finally begin practicing the earthly directions technique. This unique breathing style serves as the ultimate base for his training. He used to despise everything about Celestials, but here he is now, quietly practicing their mystical breathing technique right from the start. Brian realized this breathing exercise was way easier than he first expected. Even with its divine foundation, it still takes a long time to feel heat rising in 3 body zones simultaneously. For regular folks, this whole process could take months or even years depending on their talent, but with pure, intense training, one can reach a deep state where time completely loses its meaning. Brian quickly took his first steps toward becoming a Celestial and felt instant progress. He was so incredibly deeply immersed in this breathing pattern that he completely lost all track of the passing hours. There was no telling how many days he spent meditating, and by now his phone was completely dead, so he decided to step out into the hallway to check the date and find out exactly how much time had actually flown by. Of course, Brian was completely stunned when he saw he had spent over 100 days lost in his breathing. Once he calmed down, he headed back inside, glad to find hot water so he could wash up in peace. Strangely, he felt all his injuries had fully healed, and he was not hungry at all. Even though he had not eaten for over 100 days, it seemed he had not lost any weight at all. On the contrary, his muscles felt significantly bulkier and stronger, during this time his phone finally powered up, so he decided to check the latest news. When he glanced out the window, he was shocked by a massive dome-shaped barrier outside, since a massive funnel had appeared in the area spawning monsters. The military had likely quarantined the entire zone, but they completely forgot about Brian. Since he was locked in deep meditation, nobody remembered to evacuate him. As soon as he opened his window, and trust me, the view was absolute nightmare fuel. It was going to be tough adapting to this new reality, and he urgently needed an escape route out of this place right away. After all, he spent over 100 days in a lotus pose just to cool down his internal heat, using a truly bizarre and incredible technique. His system then notified him that it was completely disconnected from the network, which was required for full functionality. Undeterred, he began browsing his personal stats to see what he had unlocked. Turns out he possessed impressive achievements and some highly intriguing abilities. His first skill was a 9th-ranked fast movement technique, which sounded pretty promising. He clicked on the card, but nothing felt different at first, as if nothing had changed. He had to take a few steps to realize it was actually working beautifully. It felt almost like the magical compression of space. But that was not all. There were more traits, like a passive that boosts his physical power and grants a glowing punch, though monsters would spot the glow and attack him. Eventually, he scrolled down to find the training section, and right there, he spotted the very breathing technique he had just spent 100 days on training. Methods like this help level up a celestial, unlocking new power-ups in active skills. Naturally, this would take decades of harsh practice because raising the level is an incredibly costly endeavor. Doing some quick math, he realized he would be 70 years old before he could even unlock those extra skills. At this rate, he would be practicing his breathing technique for the rest of his life. To measure his achievements, he would have to focus your energy into both hands and extend your left arm. The number of rings appearing on your left hand indicates your level as a powerful celestial. Brian was trying to figure out his level and decide what to do next, but then a noise. Someone suddenly interrupted him. He sensed heavy footsteps coming down the hallway, and soon a giant beast appeared right before him. He quickly retreated to his room to stay hidden. Absolutely not wanting to face this massive, terrifying bulldog, Brian was shaking, desperately trying to find an escape route. He needs to track down some sort of gear that can help him fight off this terrifying beast. Time is quickly running out. The door creaks open. The creature has finally locked onto him. He has less than a minute to prepare for the upcoming battle. To get ready, too late. The giant, monstrous dog lunges forward instantly. It moves lightning fast, sinking its fangs deep into Brian's left shoulder. Those teeth are built to tear opponents completely to shreds. Back in ancient China, a technique known as the absorption method was feared as the most ruthless power around. This brutal skill allowed taking the lives of living beasts, which made it seem incredibly cruel. But in this desperate moment, Brian unleashes an ability that mirrors that ancient style, the legendary art of seed planting. An incredible power floods directly into his hands, allowing him to easily slam this massive, terrifying monster away. The impact of his throw is so devastating that the giant dog lies there completely motionless, looking as if it has already died. An unbelievable aura radiates from him, the reward of meditating for 100 full days. Without it, he would have been dead long ago. A bit later, his system chimes in. The stimulant has been fully absorbed by his body, packing a massive boost of protein and iron to help him grow serious muscle mass. But get this, that is not even the best part. His blood sugar drops, pure energy surges, and red blood cells start multiplying fast. At first, the guy is completely lost. He understands absolutely nothing. All he knows is that an insane amount of raw power is overflowing inside his body. It clearly comes from the life force he just drained after defeating that giant beast. This is a massive win, because this energy should easily keep him going after the light strike. But then, something even stranger catches his eye. He steps closer to the fallen beast and notices actual plants sprouting from its flesh. He is absolutely sure those green shoots were not there before the fight. It's unreal. The plants only grew after the beast died. He harvests the mysterious plants and decides to bring them along, hoping they will be useful later. But there's a catch. Brian can only use his seed planting technique once, since he needs time to absorb their power before finishing them off. It is suicidal to fight a whole pack at once. He really needs to wait for the rescue squad to show up. Fortunately, this flash of light offers the perfect opportunity. The blinding skill will not kill the beasts, but it should buy enough time to scare them off. He definitely has to use this to his advantage, especially since he just ran straight into another massive, bloodthirsty creature, and trust me, these vicious predators do not waste time planning out their strikes. The second they lock eyes on a target, they go in for the kill. Talk about bad luck. Brian's left hand is right out front, and the monster immediately lunges. The beast bites down hard, but Brian stays remarkably calm. He activates his luring technique, desperate to make this vile creature let go of him. He needs the beast gone. A few heavy strikes right to the jaw should teach this ugly beast exactly who is boss. There is zero room for mistakes now. Brian has to escape this part of the city as fast as possible. He needs to scramble quickly up to the very roof of the building to find safety. Once up there, he can signal for help using a light strike, but that is risky. The area is absolutely crawling with hordes of angry beasts. Still, Brian has no choice. He has to dig deep and find the strength to pull this off right now. Otherwise, he will be stuck fighting these rabid animals inside this building forever. Right now, he still has enough power to defend himself and retaliate, but there is a catch. The sheer volume of enemies is overwhelming. There are just too many of them gathered here. Every single one is ready to tear him apart. A light strike signals for rescue, but it cuts both ways. That bright beacon will also draw every monster within miles straight to him. When Brian finally reaches the roof, he realizes those indoor beasts were the easy part. A truly horrific and eerie sight lies ahead. Honestly, you are not ready for this. This is pure horror. Panic starts setting in as Brian realizes he is totally cornered. There is absolutely nowhere to run, and a massive wave of beasts is closing in from behind. He has only one option left: push forward, ignore the noise, and forget his fear. He has to fight like the survival of humanity rests entirely on his shoulders. Biding his time, he waits for the absolute perfect moment to unleash the light strike. The blast is insanely bright, completely blinding all the surrounding monsters for a short moment. The blinding beam shoots so high it can be seen from distant cities. It is the ultimate SOS. The scattered beasts back away, finally giving him room to breathe. He takes a moment to rest. Suddenly, a bizarre sound echoes from inside the building. Brian thinks it is the rescue squad, but looking up, he sees something very different. It is not a helicopter or a squad, but a single man literally hovering in midair. A mysterious stranger greets him warmly, introducing himself as the Fire Taoist. He asks why Brian is just standing around instead of using a jump or flight card. Brian sheepishly explains he only has the basic 3 cards he started with. The Taoist keeps chatting casually, but Brian frantically tries to warn him of the danger behind. Yet the eccentric cultivator does not seem to care about the approaching threat at all. He behaves completely unfazed by these small beasts, as if they pose absolutely zero threat to him. The moment a stray beast leaps toward him, the Taoist instantly casts a spell. It is an incredible sight to watch. This guy is on an entirely different level. This celestial expert is light years ahead of Brian, dealing with the beast in seconds. He did not even break a sweat. Turning back to Brian, his voice turns strict. He warns he will not repeat himself 3 times, ordering the boy to hold out his hand. Brian stands there, totally stunned and frozen, completely paralyzed by the pressure of this powerhouse. Seeing how terrified the kid is, the Fire Taoist simply takes the lead himself. He triggers his own technique to handle the entire situation effortlessly. Now, we need some answers. Why is Brian wandering around this dangerous, forbidden zone all by himself anyway? Does he actually have a death wish? Brian just smiles sheepishly, bowing in deep gratitude. He cannot thank his savior enough, as they quickly prepare to leave the area together. Outside the restricted area, Brian notices his phone is completely flooded with family messages. It makes sense, considering how long he was trapped inside. For over 100 days, but at least his family is safe and unharmed. Still, a lot can happen in 3 months, and he is dying to know exactly how much the outside world has shifted since he has been gone. First things first, he calls his mother to confirm she is completely fine and let her know he is safe. The guards mention a quick rescue investigation is required, but it should be over soon. He promises his worried mom that he will call back the second he gets cleared. After hanging up, an officer brings him some warm tea, keeping Brian in spirits. He is just relieved to be back and knowing his loved ones are safe, but suddenly an aggressive blonde guy bursts straight into the room. Demanding to see Brian, the guard warns him he has to speak with the commander first, identifying this hothead as Edward, a student of the base manager. Edward is incredibly hostile, instantly ordering the assistant to get out right now, completely ignoring that the guard was not even done talking with Brian. If the guard does not back down right now, a brutal fight is bound to erupt right here, once they are alone. Edward demands to know if Brian trained in any divine techniques before. The heavenly gates opened, learning that Brian has zero background in them. Edward suspects he might be the chosen one who can finally wake up. His slumbering master, hearing this wild theory, Brian just looks completely baffled, assuming this crazy guy has him mixed up with someone else. Edward pulls up a glowing system panel, pointing out the 9 official ranks of the Celestials. Newbies are classified as basic students, but their Grandmaster already recognized their innate talent, giving them an ascending rank. This is why Edward thinks he is some elite genius with unlimited potential. To him, age does not mean a single thing. Only how fast you learn and having the right mentor to guide you. Quite curious, Brian asks if the ascending level is just the base. What tier is Edward's actual master then? This simple question triggers a massive tantrum and Edward starts screaming, calling him a brainless rat. He rants that anyone blessed with divine talent must show absolute respect to their superior seniors. If Brian dares disrespect his Grandmaster again, Edward promises him a world of pain. Brian realizes Edward mimics the exact arrogant tone of his own mentor, the Fire Taoist, likely trying to copy his master's style. Pointing this out pushes the hothead over the edge, making him look ready to explode on the spot. Remember how Edward said the tier above ascending is called a high level? Well, here is where it gets good. Brian suddenly flares his aura, showing his stats are already at that exact high tier. This means Brian is much stronger, and by Edward's own logic, the blonde guy must now obey his commands. Karma is a beautiful thing. Now is the perfect time to rub those rules right in his face. Later, Edward slinks back to his master and reports the humiliating defeat. From then on, the once arrogant genius obeys Brian's every word without a single complaint. In his own room, it was easy to guess how furious the fiery Taoist was. The master simply couldn't understand how Edward, with all his gangster fighting techniques, could let himself get totally pushed around by a complete puppy like Brian. Bowing down immediately, the student begged for mercy and apologized, explaining that the Brahmin's power level was much higher. He thought it must be due to the guy's special physical constitution, meaning his base strength is totally off the charts. He has an unexplainable foundation. Edward tried his best to explain this, but his master refused to listen, completely brushing it off as a load of absolute nonsense. Instead, the Taoist explained that Brian actually possesses a standard earthly foundation. That means he shares the exact same base element as both his master and Edward. The only real difference is that Brian has a massive amount of wood element in his nature. Because of this unique wood affinity, his cultivation speed is going to be incredibly fast. Finding someone with a wood element is extremely rare, and there is a logical reason. Humanity left the water to walk on land, then lit fires to keep the freezing cold away. Later, they learned to smelt metal to extract it in its purest form from raw ore. Even though all living things share a common bond, true harmony rarely exists. Perhaps that is why Brian's sudden call for help reached the master. His rare nature demanded attention. If Edward finally understood, he needed to keep quiet. He must not speak a single word about their secret cultivation methods. The teacher promised him some healing medicine once his breathing stabilized. Still, the old Taoist found some of Brian's strange talents quite surprising. He had absolutely never heard of a technique called the solar wind before. It might be an exclusive power reserved for those with the wood element. According to high-level reports, no one should possess an unexplainable divine foundation. The authorities made sure that all test results regarding this anomaly were kept isolated. At that time, no one had actually discovered Brian's existence. This meant he was completely off the grid, and nobody knew his secret. Usually, a divine foundation is split into 3 classes: heavenly, earthly, and human. But then a mysterious 4th type appeared, possessing power that defies all measurement. This is the absolute cheat code, the unexplainable foundation. When the Celestials suddenly vanished, holders of this power tried to take over. To stop them, the Celestials had to unite for one final battle. They fought together to banish these dangerous individuals from the world forever. Now only ancient legends and faded myths remain to tell the tale. Honestly, most modern people just shrug it off as simple children's bedtime stories. Those old tales heavily feature two legendary warriors named Stephen and Kenneth. They are worshipped as heroes, but Brian finds the whole thing pretty hypocritical. If you are different, you get exiled, yet these two get treated like gods. He shrugs it off and takes a sip of his hot, delicious drink. Instantly, the natural stimulants of the tea begin coursing through his veins. It turns out this toasted brown rice brew is incredibly rich and nourishing. As he relaxes, Brian realizes why the system showed him that earthly foundation. This must have been triggered when he consumed that mysterious blue substance. Before the potion wears off and the whole world catches on to him, he needs to track down another source with the exact same power-up effect. It is pretty tough to pull off. The state likely blocked this info from regular people. So Brian starts scouring the web, desperately searching for any clues. Soon he uncovers a rather intriguing article written by an anonymous poster. The piece talks about some peculiar seeds mentioned in an old family book. Apparently they pack 3 massive energy boosts: nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol. Brian instantly flashes back, connecting the dots to what happened before. He realizes these could be the exact same seeds he grabbed off that dead monster. Pulling them from his pocket, he takes a pretty close look at the strange grains. Maybe these things are way more common than he first assumed. He digs deeper online because he still has no clue where they actually grow. Thankfully, that mysterious online article gives him the answers he needs. It points him right back to his grandfather's journal for the real secrets. The mystery writer is sharing all of this valuable intel for free. They call it the purgatory herb, a truly wild and dangerous plant. It thrives along the mystical Sanzu River, and eating it raw will make you terribly sick. But once it actually sprouts, it becomes a powerful elixir overflowing with dark energy. Armed with this sudden wave of crucial knowledge, he faces a new question. He wonders just how difficult it might be to actually cultivate these mystical things. Then he remembers how fast his current seeds already started sprouting. So he decides to run some quick tests on the ones showing 0 signs of life. To kickstart the process, he channels his trusty solar wind breathing technique once again. Within mere seconds, the immediate results leave him completely stunned. This breathing style is no joke. The effect is totally instant. The tiny seed in his palm starts sprouting at a mind-blowing pace. Right then, Edward suddenly barges into the room, clearly wanting to discuss something urgent. But when Edward looks around, he realizes the place is completely empty. It is as if Brian vanished into thin air, prompting a frantic search. Edward hunts everywhere, knowing the kid couldn't have gone very far on foot. Suspicion creeps in. Did Brian steal something before making a run for it? Sure enough, he checks the fridge and finds one single peach missing. Meanwhile, Brian is already a few hundred meters down the street, making his escape. He did not take it out of hunger. He desperately needs it for his cultivation. Now we are finally getting to the good part as he searches for answers. Activating his solar technique, he watches a miracle unfold right before his eyes. A massive, fully grown tree shoots up from the tiny seed in seconds. Just 2 deep breaths were enough to trigger this insane growth spurt. By breathing properly, you literally swap energy with the world around you. This unique solar wind power acts like a major supercharger for growing plants. If he keeps cultivating rare medicinal herbs this way, he will be totally set. His divine foundation will remain completely stable, but there is one final step. He has to consume the herb first to test its true strength. He swallows the purgatory grass stimulant, letting the active compound take effect. He immediately feels that familiar, intense heat spreading rapidly through his veins. He hopes his body will fully absorb the power, just like before. But suddenly, the sensation completely vanishes, leaving him with absolutely nothing. But the result was exactly the same, leaving him completely baffled. He felt a strange warmth from the technique, but only deep inside his stomach. A pure blue nucleus would make a far better medicine, but where could he find another? There was no easy answer, yet he refused to give up now. He pushed through, trying again and again, showing his trademark stubborn grit. Before long, a sudden, heavy heat began to spread through his entire body. The breakthrough worked, and he recalled some dark energy facts he found online. That energy was dark, while his blue core held the nature of wood. These two forces were fundamentally different, almost completely opposite. His solar wind breathing style was designed to absorb wood energy perfectly. Maybe he could adapt this technique to swallow up the dark nature instead. But if these clashing energies ended up mixing, his life would be in immediate danger. Still, he felt pretty satisfied with the progress he made today. His training efficiency was dropping, but his raw power was definitely rising. He nearly forgot to uproot the strange tree that grew during his session. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and a loud alert blared from his phone. It warned of a level 2 natural disaster. The cause was the death of the 65th son of Western Sea Poseidon. Anyone near the coast had to run for their lives. Why was Brian only hearing about this now, when a level 2 threat is no joke? If he did not find a secure shelter quickly, his peaceful days were over. Out on the streets, giant, hideous worms were already writhing around. They were mostly harmless, since they only crawled where they could dig. Panicked crowds warned each other to stay far away from the disgusting slugs. He could only hope for the best until Brian spotted a makeshift shelter. A faint protective barrier hovered above them, anchored directly to the building. He felt incredibly lucky to have followed the crowd to this safe zone. But their relief vanished when a massive, terrifying shadow loomed over them. It seemed to be hunting the disgusting worms. A few unfortunate people still had not reached the shelter, leaving them completely exposed to danger. Watching the beast approach, Brian realized things were about to get ugly. To make matters worse, a young woman clutching her dog stood directly in its path. She was crying, desperately begging for anyone to save them. Hearing her screams, the massive beast turned its terrifying gaze right toward her. It reached out with sharp, heavy claws, scooping up the crying woman. The creature carried a massive jar used to collect food for its dinner. He tossed her inside, trapping her with a writhing pile of giant worms. This terrifying demon was far from done hunting for his family tonight. Inside the protective dome, the sheltered survivors watched in silence, feeling incredibly relieved. They were just glad they were not the ones in that jar. Suddenly, the sharp scent of cigarette smoke began to drift through the crowd. Everyone turned to see Brian, calmly exhaling as he watched the horror outside. He knew he could not just stand by and watch this happen. Even if Poseidon was throwing a tantrum, innocent people did not deserve this. He stubbed out his cigarette and bolted straight out into the chaos. He lunged straight into the street. The nearby crowd watched in absolute shock. It's no secret how much Brian absolutely despises monsters, and that hatred was obvious from the start. His first clash with the Red Goblin proved it, no hesitation. Time to prepare, immediately striking first. It looked incredibly powerful. It carried enough force to make the monster drop the vase holding the woman. Onto the ground, even Brian was stunned by the impact. Just a week ago, he was nowhere near this strong. This had to be the work of the purgatory herb. That plant grants unreal strength. Suddenly, Brian noticed something. He realized the liquid falling on him wasn't rain, it was actually tears from a heartbroken Peyton mourning his lost son. Right away, Brian's body absorbed the potent stimulants from those pseudomonas tears. He could use this. Water always nourishes trees and helps them grow much faster, making the wood incredibly strong. By activating and channeling this wood element energy, Brian becomes capable of crazy things. He is ready to unleash his strength. From this tree, he managed to forge a legendary demon-banishing sword. Will it actually work in real combat? We're about to find out. Meanwhile, the towering demon struggled back up after that heavy blow, completely furious. Now, he's preparing for some brutal, bloody revenge. Promising to destroy the guy. Honestly, very few people can challenge this beast, only a rare few can. Everyone else just runs. Hide, but Brian grips his sword, preparing for a fierce showdown. He has zero intention of backing down, ready to fight to the bitter end. The monster is just as determined. Both are highly motivated, ready to give their very lives for the sake of victory. They must realize that in these brutal clashes, only one survivor remains. There's zero room for error. If Brian slips up even slightly, the monster will easily destroy him. In a matter of seconds, this cannot happen. The protective barrier is almost ready and the guy must survive. Fortunately, Brian was able to find the weaknesses in the monster's defense, immediately targeting them with his relentless attacks. That first strike easily sent the massive demon crashing back to the ground. Amazingly, even after delivering such an incredibly powerful strike, his weapon didn't have a single scratch. It seems that this is the Magic of this peachwood sword, it's completely indestructible. Meanwhile, the monster has already scrambled back onto its feet. Is gearing up to keep fighting, but wait, the demon can't take his eyes off the blade. Peachwood really does ward off evil spirits nearby. The woman who was trapped in that jar of worms realized now was her perfect chance to escape, but the monster is too fast. Spotting her right away and closing in on her, Brian realized that if he didn't step in right now, she'd end up as mere bones, and he couldn't allow that. After all, she's the reason he left the safe house. He had to do everything to save her. Wielding such an extraordinary sword gives him a massive advantage over his opponent. One perfect strike is enough to force the demon to release the girl, allowing Brian to catch her in his arms just in time like a true hero. She immediately tries to thank her savior, but Brian warns her it is way too early to celebrate. The clash is far from over and this beast is not yet beaten. Round 2 begins now. The massive bird shrieks in pure rage while holding the girl. Brian makes a split-second decision and starts sprinting away, and honestly, let's see if he can actually outrun this monster. Escape the claws of this hideous beast. The girl knows she is totally helpless and can only pray that Brian has enough power to get them both out alive. At the final second, he uses his remaining strength to toss her to safety under the barrier dome, but doing that leaves Brian completely defenseless, and he takes an incredibly brutal, direct hit from the beast. His head and back slam hard against the ground. Now he is in serious trouble. If those chemical stimulants in his body wear off right now, he is done for. There is no way he survives this fiend. Thankfully, his bones are still intact, and he can still push forward, even though his physical boost is fading fast. All he wants is for that woman to reach safety and survive this chaos. But honestly, he cannot afford to worry about anyone else right now. He needs to save his own skin and find a quick way to escape. The gigantic demon bird is absolutely livid that his fresh meal was stolen away. He wants nothing more than a bloody revenge on this kid. Brian looks right into those terrifying eyes, thinking it is totally unfair for a massive beast to fly. He knows he cannot make it to the evacuation zone in time as his strength completely drains away. The powerful battle stimulants are finally wearing off. Planting magical seeds was an option, but utilizing them against a flying opponent is incredibly tough. Whatever move he makes next is a massive, high-stakes gamble. With almost zero chance of survival, he decides to draw his main weapon. Demon Banishing Blade. It is no normal sword. This thing has plant-like traits. It takes quite a bit of time to absorb energy and grow fully powerful. Luckily, under this heavy rain of Poseidon tears, the blade can draw extra power. Using absorption magic, the weapon will hold onto all that elemental energy, ensuring he can take down this demon once and for all. His rank should be high enough to pull off this skill and survive this grueling battle. He just needs to channel the solar winds, an ancient lightning strike technique. If he executes this right, this beast will finally taste the unbelievable force of a true divine technique. Pushing all fear aside, Brian leaps directly into the jaw of death. This is an incredibly brave act for such a young guy. He unleashes a blindingly fast, devastating strike. The monster will definitely remember this clash if he even lives. It is clear Brian wants to crush this thing so badly he will fight non-stop without a single moment of rest. Now this is what true determination looks like. Every single week, his power and growth become more obvious and he can feel it. That final heavy strike proves fatal, completely decapitating the massive bird beast in a single blow. A huge crowd of onlookers has gathered to witness this unbelievable scene. Everyone is completely shocked, feeling like they are watching a real-life superhero. This massive, terrifying bird used to be a favorite local legend. It belonged to a powerful deity. Even when someone died, the state did not care. They completely ignored the tragedy, but right then, a very different kind of person stepped up. This guy did not care about any rules, he just acted. Without a second thought, he jumped in to rescue a helpless woman in deep danger. He threw himself into the fight, looking exactly like a modern-day superhero. Onlookers immediately pulled out their phones. The recording began right then and there. Thanks to this secret footage, we get to see what happened to Brian afterward. Right after the battle, a fire Taoist master blindsided the poor boy with a sudden attack. The master screamed at Brian, blaming him for causing a massive disaster in the city. He roared that the boy had just slaughtered Lady Pinafore's favorite beast, showing no mercy. This furious fire Taoist, simply turning the kid to ash felt far too light. He truly believed a quick death was too easy a punishment for such a crime. Immediately after striking, he ordered his assistant Edward to grab the unconscious boy. Edward dragged him away, but the footage was already leaking. The short video leaked to social media. Within hours, millions of people watched it. A massive debate erupted. Everyone knew this monster had been eating innocent people. No one could stop the beast. Then news of the kill reached Lady Pinafore. When she discovered her pet was dead, her reaction was exactly as bad as expected. Furious, she demanded to know if the killer had been put down yet. Her subordinates quickly explained that the boy was still breathing, but under heavy guard. He was locked up immediately, still alive but behind bars. Lady Pinafore was absolutely livid that this foolish child was allowed to live. She commanded her servants to tell the public to tear him to pieces immediately. Tear him apart or feel her ultimate, terrifying wrath. But her assistant warned her that the video of the fight had already gone viral. It was the #1 trending topic. The city leaders wanted her to go easy. They worried the entire community would riot if the Celestials pushed too hard. Lady Pinafore scoffed, muttering that the government was far too afraid of its own citizens. Her assistant quickly assured her that they had already designed a perfect solution. Everything would be fully prepared soon to satisfy her desire for absolute revenge. Meanwhile, the heavy downpour finally began to clear, and a strange calm returned. But do not be fooled, even gods cannot truly escape their selfish desires. Poseidon himself will not shed a single tear for an illegitimate son. A simple rain ritual was more than enough to keep the Sea King satisfied. Ultimately, Lady Pinafore got exactly what she wanted from this entire mess. The prize she sought was a legendary plant, rumored to be a divine treasure. Its beautiful flowers bloom only once every 1,000 years in the heavens. It takes another full 1,000 years to grow the rare fruits of this sacred tree. This is the legendary peach tree of immortality, hidden away from mortal eyes. The mystical orchard vanished when the ancient Queen Mother sacrificed her own life. She did it to seal the gates of paradise, but Lady Pinafore has a plan. If she can cultivate this tree, she will rule as the new queen. But wait, back in the city, Brian is somehow completely fine and happy, though his allies made sure to give him a very stern talking to afterwards. His reckless actions had made the powerful Celestials look incredibly bad. They warned him to avoid doing anything else that might draw unwanted eyes. He was given a clear warning about who actually holds the power here. If he stepped out of line again, he would pay a heavy price. Sure, he was not looking for applause, but what he did was no sin. Brian simply used common sense and some unreal powers to save lives. The guy just wanted to make this world a slightly better place. Even though they confiscated his new sword, he still got a little prize. After taking down the beast, he spotted something caught in its wing. A small piece of wood was tied to the monster, but who did it and why? A total mystery, but soon he realized this was no ordinary branch. The wood was alive, pulsing with energy, and he could feel it clearly. By channeling the power of the sun's winds, he managed to coax a tiny sprout from it. This was his real prize for the battle, and he knew it could grow. 1 year later, a strange new crisis began brewing across the land. People were getting furious over a foul stench spreading across the land. The higher-ups were forced to hold meetings to address the issue. While they debated cleaning up the river, citizens remained completely in the dark. The real cause of the smell, a massive monster lurking deep below. The public was angry, claiming the government was doing absolutely nothing to help. And the root of all this chaos was a legendary snakehead beast. 1 month ago, when the celestial energy started acting highly unstable, this massive creature crawled out right into the city's main river. They call this terrifying beast the millennial spotted snakehead. It crossed over from the monster world, gaining terrifying power in our waters. Now this massive creature is actually declaring itself a literal god of the water. Calling itself the River Lord, it demands sacrifices before anyone can use a single drop. And this is where our newest hero, George, comes into play. He heard the news and was not happy about this overgrown snake's attitude. George is a proud disciple of one of the 8 sacred celestials on this island. Specifically, the celestial wolf king who guards the lands of Johnson. But at the meeting, he was told to shut up and stay on topic. Just then, a sharp-looking woman in a suit walked right into the office. She ordered everyone to sit down immediately, Her name is Ruth, by the way. As the youngest student of another powerful priest celestial on this island, she has high standards. The immortal Donald, guardian of Mount Pictou, and she instantly clashed with George. George argues that this crisis is not something they can solve on their own. Looking deep into her eyes, he realizes they are handling this all wrong. She knows deep down she knows it is wrong. But this whole mess was ordered directly by the high elders themselves. Act normal, that was the plan, but Ruth suddenly snaps and screams at him. She yells that his master clearly failed to teach him any proper manners. Over 10,000 innocent people are currently suffering from terrible illnesses. Intestinal diseases are spreading fast, and they need a quick solution. Her master gave her strict orders to fix this, and she intends to. She won't let anyone, not even the Wolf King's disciple, stand in her way. Even so, George has no clue how she plans to slay the monster. The terrifying Lord of the River. Just yesterday, 4 elite Celestials failed. They tried to destroy the beast but failed. Nobody here matches their strength. Absolutely nobody in this room compares to those legendary fighters. Yet this girl seriously expects them all to band together and fight. But taking down this giant sea slug is practically an impossible task. It masterfully channels both earth and water techniques at the same time. Barely anyone can wield both elements with that kind of deadly precision. Only an incredibly high-ranking Celestial could ever hope to banish it. Someone with enough raw authority to push the monster out of bounds. Otherwise, they need something superior to both earth and water, like wood. George won't stand in her way, but he wants no part of it. He doesn't want to get involved, he says, instead of doing these stupid missions he would rather go train. Right after he says this, the others follow him out, leaving the massive office totally empty within minutes. Slaying that giant serpent is the absolute quickest way to end this nightmare. Ruth is fully prepared to risk everything to find a way to do it. The very next day, she gets her hands on a very specific weapon. A familiar wooden sword. She knows that just 1 year ago, a man killed a mythical Lady Pinafore bird with it. That peach wood sword was confiscated and locked away by the worshippers. It is an incredibly rare wooden weapon. Even low-rank Celestials can use it, which is exactly why its sword shape angered so many high gods, but once the spiritual energy inside it faded, the heavenly gods finally calmed down. Now Ruth knows that this mysterious swordsman never actually left the city. He works at a normal diner nearby, sometimes hanging out with his mother or close friends. He even catches movies. During his free time, strangely, his phone is always turned off. And he never uses the network app. This means he cannot track achievements or even activate a talisman, but considering his painful past, it makes total sense. Right as she finishes thinking about him, she spots him running straight toward her through the quiet garden. She braces herself to speak, having searched for him for a very long time. But at the very last second, he suddenly veers away. Ruth cannot miss this chance, so she instantly activates her secret tracking spell. The spirit of the road deer, but even with this swift technique, she somehow cannot close the gap. She pushes to her absolute limit, burning through her talismans, but the distance between them never shrinks. She refuses to let this slip away, desperately chasing him until she completely loses sight of him. Suddenly, he appears right behind her. He calls out to her. It seems Brian knows she works with Celestials. He explains that he was not running away, just shocked by her interest. She stares in total shock, realizing he is completely drenched in sweat. That means he did not use any talisman to outrun her tracking. He outpaced her speed spell, using nothing but pure physical strength. She immediately whips out her phone and hands it over, clearly hoping to get him to log in. He begins switching the user profile, grumbling that he hopes this finally gets them off his back. But the moment his profile loads on screen, her jaw drops in absolute shock. The guy possesses an earthly divine foundation with a seriously high level of achievement. Not only that, he has mastered the solar wind technique alongside the light step ability. To top it off, he holds 2 ability cards. Ruth then reveals her real plan. She wants him to use his wood element to help her slay the River Lord. Brian finds it hard to believe the Celestials actually care about hunting down monsters. His doubts run deep, especially after the fallout from killing that flying beast. He might be wrong, but to him, it feels like pure, deliberate neglect. Ruth quickly disagrees with his harsh view, insisting there is a method to the madness. The higher-ups are staying back on purpose because they want to test the students. They want to see if the young cultivators can handle this crisis without relying on masters. Brian finds this pretty absurd. Thousands of innocent people are suffering just for a test. And the elders are just sitting on their hands, waiting for teenagers to act. Still, Brian sets his terms. He will only help if all his sanctions are cleared. He wants proper compensation, and most importantly, he wants his sword back. Ruth is absolutely stunned. How did he even know she brought a sword with her? Brian. He explains that his breathing technique allows him to sense the surrounding trees. It is a passive skill of the style he is currently practicing. That is also why he moves so incredibly fast through these dense woods. The forest environment perfectly boosts his wood element, but there is one more thing. He wants to know if they can finally lift his annoying curfew. Ruth reassures him that the curfew issue is already cleared, at least temporarily. This mission is a big deal, and it is drawing a lot of eyes. Nobody is going to complain about his curfew if he is the one saving them. Remember, the bosses only punished him with a curfew for killing that rare bird. But now that Lady Pinafore incident is basically water under the bridge. If Ruth plays her cards right and gets him to slay the river beast, he is golden. She successfully convinces him, and they head straight to the edge of the city river. They are not alone out here. A few combat professionals have tagged along. Most of them are highly skeptical that this crazy plan will actually work. The air is thick with a nauseating stench, making it almost impossible to breathe. Ruth tells him to stay focused. They need to draw out the serpent ruling these waters. As she speaks, she keeps a close eye on Brian, wondering how he will handle this. The guy remains completely unfazed, staring down at the murky, toxic water with zero fear. To him, this is just another messy job, but he has a plan. He has actually prepared something pretty wild specifically for this dangerous mission. A secret weapon of sorts. But he definitely did not expect to unleash it the very second they arrived. He steps forward, but Ruth quickly warns him to keep his distance. Only then does she realize he is actually tossing some strange seeds into the river. It looks surprisingly familiar, like a plant she used to see back in elementary school. It turns out he is using common water hyacinth. Water purification works, half of it is complete, now they instantly get a reaction. The water beast rises up. Brian draws his sword. He jokes about his dream of doing some fishing. The giant serpent is absolutely furious. Someone is cleaning his pond. He is the local deity. He will never take orders from anyone. But Brian has another plan, a completely different take. He came to complete this mission. He does not care. We cannot forget his deep hatred. He loathes all demons. He despises them with every single fiber of his being, total hatred. It has been far too long since he got to purge these ugly creatures. Launching his attack, he shows his true power, leaving the beast visibly stunned. The water serpent takes this sudden assault as a deep personal insult. But watch closely now, this beast will not yield easily. He is going to fight back hard, a truly worthy opponent until the very end. But right away, he senses danger. This boy with a wooden sword is far more dangerous than the entire group of Celestials who attacked yesterday. The furious snake starts screaming, shouting out terrible insults. Talk about completely uncultured. Suddenly, a massive wave of dirty water almost crashes down on the helpless spectators watching. Contact with this toxic water means death, but then a miracle. Using his special plants, Brian completely purifies the entire river. But at his current tier, defeating this incredibly mighty beast is still tough. Even though he uses a strange energy that is hard to see. The snake is certain these petty tricks will not save him. But things get pretty serious. Brian realizes he needs way more plants. He grabs several fresh sprouts from his pocket and tosses them in. They hit the water. Instantly, they begin to sprout and expand rapidly. This clash is turning out to be way more intense than expected. The monster freezes. He feels a strange, ancient force. It is the power of a sacred tree once struck down by lightning. He cannot believe this kid is trying to pierce him with a toy. But Brian has poured his whole soul into this little tool. Now, the giant beast is going to feel its incredible power firsthand. This is a lightning storm dart. He spent an immense amount of effort forging it. He will not let the beast go. The serpent tries to flee. He wants to escape, but Brian has completely different plans. He wants to unleash everything today after sitting idle for a whole year. He forgot the sweet taste of victory over strong foes. It is time to make a loud statement again. The serpent flees. The beast struggles desperately to find a safe haven, but he is simply far too slow. The surrounding crowd is completely speechless at the power of this warrior. Even Ruth, who brought him along, is stunned by this display. Soon, warm sunlight breaks through, and the river runs completely clear again. The foul stench is completely gone, replaced only by the aroma of fried fish. Everyone could already smell the delicious dinner waiting tonight. Now they can finally enjoy life again after surviving that poison. Brian successfully defeated the River Lord and brought hope back to the villagers. Even so, he still feels like he acted way too rashly and drew too much unwanted attention. To the young warrior, things might not end well this time. There are clear reasons why. The Celestials ignored that monstrous River Lord for so long. Maybe it was meant to be a trial of growth, reserved solely for elite disciples. Not for common folk. Shaking it off, Brian sliced a hole in the beast and patiently searched inside for the prize he wanted. Soon enough, his fingers brushed against it, the rare inner core of a water beast. A crystallized spark of raw power formed in the hope of one day transforming into a dragon. Suddenly, furious voices roared out from above. In a flash, they bound him tight with glowing heavenly chains, yelling that they would never forgive him for this crime. It was one of the 8 sacred deities on the island, the mighty celestial Wolf King, addressing him. He was furious, barking that this foolish brat had no idea what he had just ruined. This Wolf King trained George, which is exactly why Ruth instantly remembered that arrogant man's words. How incredibly strange that they showed up the exact moment the River Lord died. Right now they looked ready to strike. Putting suspicion aside, Ruth quickly stepped forward to greet the master, baffled by their sudden arrival. The fierce Wolf King instantly recognized that he was speaking to a disciple of the legendary immortal Donald. He scoffed, unable to believe top student could be so blind to the gravity of this situation. This lowly boy she brought along has barely trained for 1 year without a proper master. He warned her that acting so recklessly would only bring shame to her own sect. But then something totally unexpected happened as Brian calmly listened to this pompous lecture and suddenly burst into loud, mocking laughter. It seemed like he had completely lost any sense of fear, convinced he has absolutely nothing to dread. Besides, he did nothing wrong. They only looked down on him due to his unorthodox background. This wasn't his first time dealing with hypocrites. It was verified on his app, and he saw right through their timely arrival after the snake perished. It was obvious this was exactly what they had planned. And he saw right through their true intentions. They must have been watching this creature closely for a very long time, because they only showed up after his lethal blow. They wanted to kill the beast themselves so the common folk would praise them, but he ruined their entire scheme to hype up their own disciple, making them rush here in a panic. It all looked so hilarious that Brian couldn't help but grin, even as the heavenly Wolf King looked ready to explode with rage. He was convinced this brat was solely to blame for what lay ahead, though even his own allies thought he was overreacting. Suddenly, the air shifted, following a brutal lightning-fast strike from the enraged elder. Brian stood completely unharmed. He smiled, mocking that he expected a stab to the gut just like last time. Before unsheathing his own blade, the celestial Wolf King stared in absolute shock at this insolent kid who didn't even have a master. Sneers, thinking Brian doesn't understand the consequence of drawing sword and pointing it at a legendary warrior. It is time for this insolent brat to speak his final words before he dies, but Brian is just smiling. He says that he will not die today and will certainly never fall to the Wolf King. The master has never witnessed such crazy arrogance from any student, and now we are about to witness an incredibly wild and brutal show of raw power. The legendary warrior must unleash his skills to defend his terrifying authority. He swiftly lunges straight at the kid, but Brian remains completely calm and totally unbothered. He grips his sword firmly, staring straight ahead with absolute confidence in his skills. This veteran master's strike is incredibly fast. Brian has never faced this level of overwhelming strength before, but soon the crowd shockingly realizes that another incredibly powerful master has stepped in to help save him. Meet Marks, a high-level celestial cultivator from the 3 heavenly kingdoms. He steps forward and openly announces that he received a direct request from Lady Penaqua, which is the only reason he intervened today. He politely asks the Wolf King not to take offense at his interference. The Wolf King growls back in sheer frustration, guessing that the lady probably wants to tear this little brat into a million bloody pieces herself. Marx calmly replies that the Wolf King is even more foolish than he expected, warning that fighting here will only destroy both of their highly respected reputations. With those words, Elder Marx grabs Brian and vanishes into thin air. The Wolf King is left absolutely furious, roaring in pure anger. He cannot comprehend why that treacherous lady sent a powerhouse like Elder Marx to save a worthless weakling. Meanwhile, Marx brings Brian back to his beautiful, massive estate. The young talent has never seen such an incredible, sprawling indoor garden before. It is as if he knew help was always coming, which explains his incredibly relaxed attitude. The elder decides to offer some critical advice, seeing that Brian clearly thinks he is a special exception to every single rule. He warns that acting too arrogant against powerful rivals only leads to a sudden and painful defeat. After a brief silence, Brian smiles and thanks him. Exactly 1 year has passed since he successfully chopped off the head of that massive, terrifying, beastly bird. He still clearly remembers how shocked he was after everything happened. No matter how good his intentions were, nobody understood them. That is why he prepared thoroughly the exact moment rumors of the water snake first emerged. He planned ahead so he would never suffer those painful trials again. Now that he has finally met Lady Pinaqua, he won't act recklessly anymore because he is incredibly confident in his skills. He won't let anyone talk down to him like a child. Lady Pinaqua has a highly special, secret room where incredibly rare, divine medicinal herbs are carefully selected and grown. Most people believe the history of this place is a total rumor. But Brian has already designed a highly brilliant, flawless strategy to uncover the real truth. The plan is simple: draw the attention of the lady who owns it. Suddenly, one of her assistants approaches the young man and presents him with tiny seeds. Lady Pinaqua smiles, asking if he knows what they are. Brian explains that these are rare seeds of the herb of purgatory. It is an incredibly scarce plant that mortals buy on the black market. Lady Pinaqua immediately begins asking questions about the shady seller of these seeds, clearly planning to punish him later. Then she locks eyes with Brian with a quiet smile, asking if he knows the culprit. Right away, Brian drops straight to his knees, pleading for forgiveness and desperately explaining that he had no other option and was completely broke. The lady smiles, asking him to raise his head, deciding his fear has already paid for his sins. But forgiveness does not mean he gets off completely free. The price for slaying her beast is quite high, but she offers him another chance at mercy. By working in her private gardens, she points out that she keeps rare plants. Knows Brian has the rare talent to cultivate things like purgatory herbs, plus he easily cleaned the river polluted by that massive water snake using simple lake weeds. Brian is secretly thrilled that this noble lady values his skills. She is even aware of his solar wind technique, which forces plants to bloom in days, but doing this with purgatory grass is far more complex. He has already tried and failed before. Basically, Brian is admitting he might not be ready for this task. She loves his bold confidence. It is wild that he dares to negotiate and set conditions during their very first meeting, so the lady decides to send him off with a few basic medicinal herbs and some essential gardening gear. He will now work alongside other youths to speed up progress, serving under them so they can lend him their magical energy for the job. Brian bows deeply with a smile, thanking her for this surprising kindness. Once he departs, a very telling conversation unfolds behind closed doors. Meet Carol, the mysterious girl known as the wilted flower of the Sura. When asked about young Master Brian, she admits she finds him highly suspicious. He seems far too compliant and did not even ask to see the gardens yet. Carol has also heard the crazy rumors surrounding this young man, especially how he slaughtered the lady's prized monster bird. Word is also spreading that he single-handedly crushed the great river snake and saved the city. He might look completely inexperienced, but doing all this proves the kid is either an absolute genius or a completely unhinged psychopath. Carol cannot comprehend why the lady keeps him around if he is untrustworthy, which is exactly why Lady Pinaqua ordered Carol to keep a very close watch on him. He will only be allowed to manage the 6th garden, so even with malicious intent, he cannot steal a thing, and if he acts Foolish, his body will make perfect fertilizer for the soil. Carol and Lady Pinacoa only teamed up due to the peach on the half-island. Otherwise, the lady is someone Carol would absolutely despise in normal life. She quietly hopes this talented youth proves far more useful than simple. Manure, interestingly, Brian is actually sharp enough to sense the celestial. Carol nearby, he estimates her power level is over 300. While Lady Pinacoa sits at well over 400, but having already unlocked 10 solar wind stars within 1 year, sensing auras is second nature. He still isn't sure about the powers of those two women. When you look at the Heavenly Wolf King, he acts like a complete psychopath. His power is 600, strangely high. Master Mar, who stepped in to shield Brian, is on that same level. That puts him right alongside Lady Pinacoa now. Look at his phone screen. A fresh system update is starting, meaning a brand new evaluation of his divine base. Turns out he has already reached an incredibly mystical level of achievement. For the past year, he secretly studied every solar wind technique in theory. But now it is finally time for some hands-on practice and real training. He has waited a long time for this. Today, he brings a gift for his tree. This is the very object he harvested directly from the body of the water snake. By burying it right near the roots of the tree, it should help the plant grow stronger. He does this for a reason, hoping the plant will reward him for the help. Soon, he sits down to meditate near it. He can spend several days in a row lost in this deep cultivation training. When he finally opens his eyes, a rich, sweet scent of peaches fills the air. A whole year has passed since he first learned to empower his attacks. But only a week ago, the flowers on his tree bloomed and bore fruit. Even though they are still quite small, they look incredibly juicy and ripe. They seem perfectly ripe, so why not take a bite? Just then, a voice calls. Slow down, a voice warns behind him. He spins around, completely shocked. A massive brown bear is standing right there, and Brian immediately demands answers. Brian immediately asks him who he is and why he has ventured all this way. It turns out the elder named this massive brown bear Guanaco, a very familiar creature. Guanaco is the guardian god of a famous mountain, the subject of ancient legends. 100 years ago, earthly officials feared the mountain's intense fire energy. They believed this burning energy would have a terrible effect on the city below. So they decided to add water energy by installing a statue of a horned lion. They did not stop there, digging up the southern pond and changing the energy flow. They terribly damaged the energy of Mount Guanashan. Meanwhile, the bear trained here for over a year, hoping to meet the boy much earlier. It remains unclear why the guanaco did not approach Brian much sooner. After the tree began growing and altering the soil, the bear could not enter. He politely asks the giant bear to wait while he eats a single peach. But the bear suddenly starts yelling at him to stop. The bear insists that the tree's entire energy is stored in the center of this fruit. If you pick it now, the tree's protection will completely stop working. Poppies will face serious trouble if outsiders take the tree after the shield falls. Once the protection drops, the bear is not just talking about himself. Sooner or later, other people will start discovering the existence of this tree. Right now, someone is waiting for Brian at the bottom of this hill. They are no friends. Looking up, he spots a massive concentration of dark energy. If they breach the outer barrier to this extent, they definitely mean business. They certainly are not here for Brian. They came for the rare peaches. Even now, Gwanak can feel a highly skilled Taoist heading right this way. Armed with fire, Brian could awaken the tree. But human bodies simply cannot absorb the immense healing power inside it. Its holy properties are just too pure. But Gwanak is a different kind of creature. The peach must go to him. He is confident he will regain his full strength and protect them all. The boy gently picks the fruit and apologizes. Then he just eats it all by himself, leaving Gwanak absolutely fuming in pure rage. The beast cannot understand how someone can be so stupid, yet so strong. This is the legendary peach that made the great Monkey King Donga Celestial. But what exactly happens to Brian right now? The divine nutrients are already fully absorbed into his body. The bear watches him closely, highly interested to see the effects of this divine fruit. He asks the boy if he feels any sudden changes happening inside. Brian simply smiles. It is just incredibly juicy and delicious, he says. Brown Bear is completely speechless, having absolutely no words for such a ridiculous answer. But as Gwanak fumes, a sudden warmth spreads through the boy. No matter what technique he tries, the heat refuses to focus in one place. It just keeps flowing everywhere, and the poor kid has absolutely no clue how to control it. Besides, this energy feels entirely different from the power he felt last time. It is warmer. It takes 3,000 years to grow even a small peach. So technically, a peach that is only 1 year old should have an incredibly weak effect. Brian begs the brown bear for help, but the creature says his energy is completely depleted. He is exhausted, but then Brian hands him a mysterious item. The giant bear looks closer and realizes these are actually the seeds of the purgatory grass. He is completely shocked that an ordinary guy has such rare plants, especially since these divine seeds are already beginning to sprout right now. Gwanok silently prays that he can keep them, hoping that Brian will not take them back. Thinking the giant bear looks adorable, Brian happily pulls even more seeds right out of his pocket. The giant beast has not looked this happy since he was a little cub. He has clearly never looked this happy, and Brian hopes this rare gift helps him recover. He wants the beast to fully replenish his strength with the divine seeds. Bear immediately starts devouring the plants, boasting that he can rule over any mountain now. Suddenly, Brian freezes. It is almost like he heard some distant noise. 3 seeds of the purgatory herb cannot completely restore him, but it helps. Honestly, that does not even matter right now. They have far bigger problems to worry about. A group of highly dangerous enemies is actively hunting for Brian right now. Using his phone and system map, he tries to pinpoint their exact location. The system map loads. Someone is already rapidly closing in on their position. Brian is fully determined to fight this intruder before they cause any trouble, or they will steal his peach tray. But the bear warns him that he has absolutely no chance of winning. His training is not enough to stop such a formidable opponent. Yet Brian remains strangely calm, as if he already knows the traveler is an old friend. It is George, a student of the famous master, who suddenly spots Brian. He had personally decided to step out and meet Brian right here in this forest. Brian immediately sensed the incredible energy rolling off him, realizing this guy was a disciple of the Heavenly Wolf King. It looks like the master ordered his student to personally bring Brian back, and even handed the student a secret tool for the job. It was an odd weapon to help in battle, though Brian barely understands what the thing actually is. It is called the nine-tailed fox, and the bear claims it is a terrifying weapon, since even a fox with 5 tails was spotted once 300 years ago. It is hard to believe such a treasure was crafted from a genuine 9-tailed fox, since this incredibly rare and valuable treasure is intact. The residual energy of the celestial ghost inside must be completely massive. It seems that even though his master is the legendary Heavenly Wolf King, this guy is still planning to trigger a massive blast using the artifact. The real problem is that this explosion will happen right in a highly populated city, putting countless innocent lives at risk, but George remains perfectly calm, claiming it does not matter what skills he uses or how loud Brian decides to scream, because of a powerful protective barrier. The entire city will never see or hear what is happening thanks to the special flag of the Northern Dark Squad. Meanwhile, Gwanek was completely shocked to hear how unusual the energy signature was. It turned out to be a legendary treasure holding the absolute power of the 4 heavenly beasts. George, however, has no idea what kind of creature is sitting in that tree, or why it keeps talking. Brian simply replies that he has never met this bear before, and it is his first time seeing it. He jokes that it is probably just rabbit fluff. For a while now, this bear has just been sitting there sharing random facts from the very top branch. Honestly, it is like this talking bear works for Wikipedia, always explaining every detail. George was absolutely furious. He was already deeply annoyed by Ruth, and now this fool shows up with a talking bear. He hates that everyone keeps interfering in his business, still firmly believing the water snake was his rightful prey. So since the beast is already dead, George decides that he is going to take Brian's life instead. Right away, it is clear George's power has spiked massively, surging to 5 times his normal level in a matter of seconds. You could compare it to a paid cheat item in a game. Back when Ruth met Brian, he had scattered all of his spiritual energy across the entire mountain, sealing away his skills. But now, the wind distribution technique is fully active, pulling back all of that previously scattered energy. Now get ready, because we are about to see a clash between 2 incredibly talented Young masters, George definitely has more experience, but it seems Brian possesses far more raw talent, although he has faced tough challenges before. This opponent is on a completely different level of aggression. This is a true clash of opposing styles, which is always incredibly exciting to witness. Armed with his trusty wooden sword, Brian is ready to fight, especially since he recently consumed that sacred peach. That boost gives him ultimate confidence. 1 full year of brutal, non-stop training. Even the brown bear is left completely speechless watching Brian's skills. Previously this seemed impossible, but now he has entered a perfect harmony with nature. Guanaco thought pulling off something like this was completely impossible, but now he realized how wrong he was. Now George looked completely shaken, visibly trembling from a deep dread of death. From the start, he declared everything here would stay trapped within this barrier, so if he chooses to point his deadly blade at someone else, they must be ready to strike back. Clearly, George despises Brian. To George, Brian is just a nobody who cannot even find an experienced master. He was fully prepared to activate his dangerous artifact and unleash his full power, but he felt a surge of agonizing pain as if struck by lightning. Within seconds, his consciousness faded, sending him crashing down. Totally clueless, a moment later, he and the bear walked closer to inspect, and it looked like George was in a truly awful spot when he aggressively brandished his weapon while hoping to fully exploit its great power. His soul was completely sucked dry, leaving him with zero strength. It is a highly terrifying chapter in the legacy of sacred artifacts created by dark demons. Still, it is pretty unlikely he will die. If a worthy master held this legendary artifact, even this mountain would take flight, since every sacred relic can literally lift a whole mountain or carve out a river. Before this moment, Brian never once realized these sacred weapons held such immense and terrifying power. The instant he finally grasped the weapon, he witnessed a sudden flash of fire, a sight that felt strangely familiar. It is not hard to guess that it is time to face off against the fiery Taoist again. This seasoned artisan rushed over and grabbed George to closely inspect the fallen boy's state. He simply cannot believe a disciple of the great and legendary Heavenly Wolf King has acted so foolishly within his own domain. He immediately began yelling at Brian, demanding to understand why he did it, but the young boy insisted it was only self-defense. Now the fiery Taoist is certain this reckless kid will never escape the true and absolute wrath of the Wolf King. He strongly believes that he should have personally reduced this idiot to ashes a year ago. He simply cannot fathom why the great Heavenly Wolf King should ever suffer such a disaster as Brian. That is why the angry master wants to scorch his lungs and personally drag him directly to the Heavenly Wolf King. Game on. Another intense battle lies ahead. Brian has crossed paths with far too many wild characters today. Now things get much tougher for him because he is no longer fighting a basic apprentice, but an actual elite. This opponent's blazing, hellish strikes are a lethal threat to any living creature on this planet. Thankfully, Brian has learned quite a lot over the past year, raising his blade to desperately shield himself from the scorching flames. Yet even with his sword and the PT-8, he is still far too weak. For now, perhaps that special artifact he managed to take from George can help him. This lopsided clash, the massive gap in both raw power and experience, makes it almost impossible to block these relentless, fiery onslaughts. Safe up in the branches, the bear urgently calls out, telling the boy to try using the nine-tailed fox artifact. The fiery Taoist immediately overhears this and fires a hot strike at the bear, but Guanaco manages to shout that Brian should channel every single ounce of his inner energy to trigger the artifact, regardless of the element uses. Naturally, the boy begins to worry that this artifact could consume his soul just as it did to George, but until he actually tries it himself, he will never know the true answer, so he makes his choice incredibly fast. And that artifact immediately unleashes its devastating, raw power. The fire Taoist is totally shocked that this brat dares unleash an ancient artifact against him, but no matter how furious the seasoned master gets, he instantly feels that terrifying, hellish power of the fox's attack. This blast shocks not just the master but also the kid who triggered the artifact. It is an absolutely massive blow that can only be compared to a rampaging Godzilla. Afterwards, raging fire spreads everywhere, almost as if a massive explosion went off, leaving absolutely no survivors. Brian then decides to go Look for Guanok, but in that exact split second, he feels his enemy start to ambush him from behind. The pain is absolutely blinding, like nothing Brian has ever experienced in his entire life. Looking down, he immediately gasps as he sees blood dripping heavily from his chest. This is real serious trouble, it seems. Like the fire Taoist managed to land a brutal, fatal blow using the very last of his strength. The furious master spits that it wasn't enough for Brian to reduce the heavenly Wolf King's disciple into a helpless vegetable. He didn't stop. They're choosing to dare use an ancient artifact against a legendary master. The fire Taoist is going to punish this kid brutally, and this is truly the absolute limit of his patience. He unleashes a savage attack on Brian, throwing everything he's got. It looks like he's trying to char the kid alive. It's unbelievable that he's still breathing. Not gonna lie, no normal creature should survive this. Such a devastating onslaught. The fire Taoist steps closer, mocking him, saying he won't ever let him pull that trick again. He won't kill him just yet, because he needs to drag him directly to the fearsome heavenly wolf king. The revenge is going to be merciless, and the Wolf King will definitely want to end his life personally. At first, Brian worries he is very seriously wounded, but strangely, he feels the intense pain starting to fade away. It turns out the raw healing power of the sacred peach saving him. Ages ago, the Monkey King wanted to bypass all potential damage by forging his legendary, indestructible skin. He became completely immune to a vast number of sacred weapons, surviving 49 days on the path of the ape. Despite the heavy pressure of the Buddha's 5 fingers, that skin saved him for 500 years. The legendary Dong constantly sought a physical body that could defy death itself. So he acquired the legendary immortality cages. Even the most horrific, deadly methods of the messengers of death couldn't kill him. Soon, even the dread king of the underworld gave up completely. And right now, Brian is finally getting exactly what he wanted. The divine essence of that mystical peach starts circulating rapidly through his system. His body possesses deep, hidden pathways designed for rapid healing and detoxification, including the neutralizing all poisons. His new liver floods his entire body with a warm, surging energy from head to toe. Even the seasoned master can feel this shocking pressure rising from the boy. The master simply cannot comprehend how he can wield pure water energy. Only now does the fire Taoist truly realize that this kid possesses an incredibly mysterious, divine foundation. Brian doesn't quite understand how any of this is happening, but either way, he feels absolutely incredible. He has no more. Shaking off the pain, Brian readies his artifact for the next round of this brutal battle. Armed with divine water, he knows his element will always douse any flame. The fire Taoist watches in horror, all his previous confidence suddenly vanishing. Panic sets in as the master realizes he is completely outmatched. Finding himself in this fragile position, he has no idea how this is even possible. But it doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly, the heavy strain catches up and Brian passes out. Guan Ao, the brown bear, frantically nudges him until Brian finally opens his eyes. Brian struggles to remember what happened, while Guan Ao stares in complete disbelief. The brown bear just cannot fathom how Brian managed to completely flood this entire area. He has never seen such mastery over ancient relics and inner energy. The bear presses the boy for answers, hoping for some explanation. But Brian seems just as shocked as he looks at the absolute chaotic mess he just made. He cannot explain his own power. Shaking it off, he quickly searches the fire Taoist's body. Brian needs to locate the control flag that can dismantle this powerful barrier. Reaching into the robes, he grabs a strange item that instantly catches his eye. Guan Ao speaks up, identifying the item as a magic bag of treasures. Put simply, it is a spatial pouch designed to store massive items with ease. It preserves large relics. Brian figures his ally George must have one too. But Guan Ao quickly shuts down his daydreaming, warning him that time is running out. Reinforcements from the Fire Clan are almost certainly on their way to this location. If they linger here any longer, they will find themselves in deep trouble. Acting fast, Brian hoists the unconscious Fire Taoist and carries him away. Guan Ao remains terrified that their enemies will arrive and discover the sacred peach tree. Yet despite the looming threat, the young prodigy remains incredibly relaxed and keeps smiling. Brian just smiles, completely unfazed by the danger. Telling the bear to wait, he suddenly unleashes his solar wind execution technique. Activating the second star of this art, he begins gathering the falling leaves. It is a bizarre, mesmerizing sight, though its true purpose remains a mystery. Even Guanao has never witnessed such spectacular beauty, staring with his mouth wide open. Brian seems to be forcing the tree to absorb the bodies. He is using the Taoist's energy as raw nourishment to ripen a brand new fruit. Their timing is perfect because just a few seconds later, hostile reinforcements finally arrive. As the peach tree blooms, the barrier seals, hiding them from enemies. The searchers find absolutely nothing, though things are not as perfect as they seem. Had the fallen master lacked the fire element, Brian could never grow this fruit. Fortunately, the master's fire was just what Brian needed to grow a new peach. And this spiritual fruit holds incredible, hidden medicinal properties of immense value. This secret treasure is so rare, almost nobody knows it exists. Only a select few in the world understand the true power of this peach. Since the fruit is not fully ripe yet, its current effects are somewhat limited. The ultimate potency of the harvest always depends on its size and cultivation time. Even now, simply routing the water energy through his liver boosts his strength. With his power rising, one can only imagine the boost from a fully ripe peach. Feeling a bit sheepish, Guanao asks to explore the hidden world behind the barrier. He begs Brian to show him around the mysterious scenery sealed behind the barrier. The mountain deity is actually able to wander the city streets. All it takes is releasing his alter ego, but he needs some extra strength for that. Which is pretty rough because even when people visit, they never bring anything interesting. But now that they have crossed paths, the bear can finally explore the world. He gets to see everything he has missed, all thanks to Brian. Brian agrees to help him, but in return, he wants a little favor too. The deity quickly agrees to his terms and hands over a special gift. Though it is a pretty bizarre reward, especially considering what it actually is. It is just a peanut snack shaped like a mace, but now lesson time. We get a quick history class from our Gwenok guide about some strange ancient beings. They have been appearing all over East Asia, including the Korean peninsula. An intelligent fantasy race known as goblins who possessed incredible powers. They did not just have physical strength, they had spiritual power too. They are truly amazing, even crafting unique tools to refine their skills. These weapons made their powers deadly accurate, like this legendary goblin mace. The very weapon our brown bear companion was just telling Brian about. Brian finally gets it, though he remembers reading that only the owner can use it. That is true, but it is still a priceless relic you can trade for anything. Goblins will trade anything for their lost gear, like this helmet and mace. These items cannot be remade, so losing one is a massive deal. Losing one cuts the owner's power in half. This means Brian now has massive leverage. He can make them do whatever he wants with a little proper blackmail. The bear's legends actually sound pretty fun, even if Brian is skeptical. Either way, he is not expecting miracles, so he agrees to take him along. Gwenok is absolutely thrilled and completely overjoyed to finally tag along on this trip. He has dreamed of finally seeing the bright side of the world for so long. But first, Brian tells him it is time to go garden with Lady Pinafore. With the new year coming up, a major summit is scheduled for the 31st of this month. The nation's leaders are getting ready to meet with mayors and powerful VIPs. Rumor has it that the whole meeting centers around the mysterious Tower of Babel. At least that is what ordinary people say, but there is more to this legendary tower. It is truly unique because it was built entirely by human hands. They wanted it to reach high heaven before the celestial gates shut forever. Thanks to the current celestial dynasty, the structure has been fully rebuilt. They designed it in a Babylonian style, while Brian is just riding in a cab. He is totally relaxed, unaware that his peaceful ride is about to end. The driver suddenly slams on the brakes as someone steps into the road. Brian has absolutely no idea what is going on out there. When he finally looks out the window, he gets a massive shock. He genuinely thinks a monster is blocking their path. But looking closer, he realizes the reality is actually much weirder. It is actually Carol, Lady Pinafore's assistant, standing directly in front of the car. She glares right at Brian and demands that he step out of the vehicle immediately. Once he complies, she explains that she is assigned to be his temporary partner. She adds that it is an order from the lady, and she frankly does not care. It was up to Brian to listen, but she warned him right away if her name got dragged into his mess, he would pay a painful price. Brian just smiled, assuring him that everything would be absolutely Meanwhile, a bear disguised as a giant popsicle tagged along, recognizing the girl instantly. He knew right then that Brian was in for a rough time. The bear claimed to know her deepest secrets, along with all her weaknesses. He had already learned that she had a major thing for model-looking guys. Legend says an incredibly handsome, elegant man once lived on the island. Rumors claimed this insanely attractive man was actually the son of a powerful deity. Called Moon, an ordinary girl named Carol once caught him swimming. Pure shock, that sight instantly awakened her dormant and powerful spiritual foundation. Power flooded her, an overwhelming surge of inner strength filled her up. Even though heaven's gates were tightly shut, Brian couldn't believe she awakened divine power just by looking at a guy. He figured the guanac was lying through his teeth. To Brian, a power-up like that was absolutely impossible. Yet legends tell of special people unlocking their powers under extreme mental shock. Deities would choose these humans and raise them in the mortal world. Since Carol shared the same spiritual foundation as Moon, she was welcomed into his inner circle. Carol was incredibly confident, always knowing her worth. She relentlessly pursued her beloved Moon, but to him, she was a nobody. No backing, he saw her as just an ordinary, powerless celestial. Knowing he had absolutely no reason to look her way, she decided to make one. To force him to notice her, in under 100 years, Carol rose to power. To conquer Jeju Island, showing terrifying progress and earning a legendary title. They called her the flower that would tear heaven apart if left unpicked. The wilted flower of Sura, having successfully built her own massive dynasty, Carol formally proposed marriage to Moon, but both Moon and his father panicked. Terrified of her power, they immediately plotted a scheme to get rid of her. Carol was simply dreaming of a happy future. The deceitful father and son rallied every single resident of the island against her. When the big day arrived, things immediately felt horribly wrong. But Carol remained oblivious, even as a horde of lethal mercenaries surrounded her. And trust me, they definitely were not there to celebrate her marriage. They immediately attacked, screaming that the wilted Sura flower had to die. Total betrayal, she faced a lethal legion of professional killers. Her eyes burned with such a terrifying rage that no one dared look. Unleashing years of bottled-up fury, she relentlessly tore into the assassins. Within minutes, the mercenaries realized they had made a fatal mistake. They deeply regretted trying to destroy her, although they had the numbers. Absolutely no one escaped her wrath. This legendary battle nearly swallowed Jeju Island. History would record that day as the clash that almost destroyed the island. But in the end, Carol still lost because the man she loved betrayed her. Hollow victory, slaughtering the mercenaries brought her zero actual peace. Standing amidst the carnage, her eyes quietly welled with tears of pure sorrow. Many powerful factions approached her for her abilities, sending all sorts of handsome guys. She clearly had a thing for those pretty faces, which everyone quickly learned. But none of those men survived. If her friend, the Berry Princess, had not stepped in, Carol would have been thrown off this island a very long time ago. Barry figures Brian should be thrilled, since this girl has zero reason to hate him. Still, Guanic knows Brian is not exactly Carol's type when it comes to looks. Carol warns him they are already late, forcing him to quickly apologize and hurry. Apologizing, he hurries along. She then explains the layout of this massive building. The lady of the house owns 6 gardens, each tended by a different keeper. Out of all these plots, Brian is assigned to work only in the 6th garden. He immediately figures the 6th garden must be the absolute least important of them all. This means he will probably not get anywhere near the valuable medicinal herbs anytime soon. But the moment they push open the heavy gates to that 6th garden, you can bet he is completely floored. There are literally 2 suns shining above. Yet the land looks absolutely ruined, like nobody has touched it in 1,000 years. Turns out each garden gate leads to a different time zone and place in the world. Now it is up to Brian to personally bring this 6th garden back to life. This sanctuary has remained locked since the last ruler died hundreds of years ago. But as the world changes and more celestials emerge, even the most common herbs are suddenly becoming incredibly valuable, so this ancient 6th garden is finally open, and he won't be working here for free. Once these plants grow, Brian gets to keep all the massive profits for himself. Suddenly, Carol's phone rings loudly and slips right out of her pocket. Brian cannot help but notice the cheerful ringtone playing on her screen. It really looks like she is getting a call from some handsome guy. Remembering all those dark rumors about her past handsome victims, he feels sick. Brian knows he must tread carefully, one wrong word right now and he is finished. He quickly mutters how much he respects her, right before completely passing out. When he finally blinks his eyes open, a massive brown bear is staring down at him. The creature speaks up, grumbling that he has been waiting a very long time for him. He has been sitting there for over 2 hours, and he is getting extremely hungry. The bear mentions it was an incredible shot, the likes of which he has never seen. And honestly, who can blame him? Carol's raw kick was absolutely devastating. It was the first time the beast saw someone execute that kick without any real technique. Only now does Brian realize he was taken down by a girl. But honestly, that is normal. The bear explains that despite the garden's awful state, only the strongest, most resilient plants have managed to survive and grow here. This means their quality and flavor are absolutely unmatched. Carol says they will watch him very closely, monitoring his progress all the way until the start of next season. If he can prove his worth and show off some real talent, he will get the chance to cultivate legendary flora like the mythical sacred peach tree. Or even better, he might be given custody of far more precious, godlike plants. He has to seize this chance to grow significantly stronger than he is now. That is the only way to avoid becoming a plaything for the ultra-powerful. Brian resolves that he will never let anyone threaten his life or his family again. In this world of wild, untamed celestials, he must take action. First, he needs to restore a neglected field that has been abandoned for many long years. It's a total mess, looking like a massive wildfire swept through. He pulls out a legendary Taoist fire master's weapon, feeling a bit guilty about his past cruelty. After all, this master saved his life multiple times, and he's deeply grateful. Meanwhile, the bear watches him pray, highly skeptical of the boys. Sincerity, it's just a simple plant. There's no way he's taking it to heaven so easily, but Guanak barely knows this guy yet, and definitely underestimates his true potential. As it turns out, Brian can do so much more than anyone could ever expect. The giant beast stands there in absolute shock. He can't believe it, yet the boy doesn't seem surprised by his own actions at all. A scorched peach tree that normally needs a whole month of recovery now takes just 4 seconds to fully bloom back to its massive size. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Honestly, the kid is basically the king of plants at this point. He does using the solar wind execution technique, the legendary ninth star of song. The dead trees literally spring back to life. And he tells them they'll be taking over the duties of experienced farmers. They happily obey their new master and immediately start tending to the garden. The brown bear can't hide his utter shock, which makes total sense. He has never witnessed such an insane miracle in his entire life. This ability to resurrect dead plants takes an immense amount of energy, even for high-level celestials, yet Brian pulled it off with effortless ease. With the job done, he sighs and says it's finally time to rest. He drained way too much stamina on this task. The bear doesn't mind a break either, and hands the boy a fresh, perfectly ripe date. Walking into the garden house, they discover the interior is actually much more spacious than they ever expected. According to the memoirs inside, the former ruler of this sixth garden was named Puck. For now, Brian just wants to recover his lost strength through deep breathing cultivation. Rebuilding the entire garden took a heavy toll on him. The boy quietly slips deep into his meditative state, but suddenly senses a bizarre, unfamiliar presence that catches him off guard. Startled, he leaps to his feet, trying to process what just happened. It feels like he heard a plant calling out, directly responding to his breath. The mysterious plant seems to be hidden somewhere beneath the lower floor of this building. Brian isn't completely sure, but he decides to use the leftover date seeds. He quickly crafts a small, sharp tool out of them and immediately starts digging a hole straight into the floor, an abrupt move that leaves the bear completely speechless. Within just a few seconds, a massive hole opens up and they both begin falling. At the absolute last second, the bear grabs the boy, saving him from a nasty fall. Now they can finally see what lies beneath. Guanak explains that this is a unique barrier, painted entirely with fresh blood. Whoever created it must have felt absolute, burning hatred, making this extremely dangerous. Something is definitely hidden down here, as the voice Brian felt earlier came from below. There's no doubt now, he is absolutely determined to break through this seal. He doesn't care about the consequences or whatever dangers might be waiting for them. After several minutes of intense and active digging, they finally break through and see a hidden chamber directly below them. Suddenly, a mysterious force grabs Brian and Gwanek off their feet, revealing Puck, the powerful lord of the Sixth Garden. He summoned the new manager to expose all the dark deeds of Lady Pinacua. Years ago, as Puck walked home after hanging out with his friends, he accidentally stumbled directly into a sacred shrine and got possessed by a lingering ghost. He was completely helpless. Luckily, a passing scientist noticed his struggle and immediately helped him, using scattered red beans to banish the spirit for good. But he warned that being targeted meant his spiritual foundation had awakened. Remaining in the human world would only invite endless danger. He was doomed. Power-hungry cultivators obsessed with stealing celestial power would hunt him down without mercy. To avoid absolute ruin, it was best to leave right away, but the scientist smiled and told him not to worry since he knew a certain celestial master. Only obedience mattered. That is how Puck reached Lady Pinacua's pavilion. The elders promised that dedicated training would make him powerful, but unfortunately, since he was born a normal human, reaching those heights was impossible. He slaved away day after day, but his actual power levels never grew at all. Soon, crushing debts became his ceiling, though he stubbornly kept hoping for change. But he was dead wrong. By the time he turned 30 years old, he met a young girl from the human world who possessed that same spiritual gift. Seeing this innocent child trapped in this hellhole shocked him to his very core. She was here for the exact same reason, and that is when the truth clicked. Her tragic story mirrored his own, and that's when the shocking truth clicked. His possession at the shrine years ago was not a random accident. That friendly scientist had deliberately sent the ghost to trigger his dormant spiritual awakening. It was a setup to trap him. After learning other servants' stories, he realized he could never survive a lifetime as a mere servant. So he begged every martial arts master he knew to teach him. Every single time they tossed him useless scraps of information, he practiced hard. But his ordinary, strengthless body was breaking down with every passing year. He grew painfully frail, and in that pitiful state, the others even mockingly gave him a cruel, humiliating nickname that completely shattered his remaining pride. Foxdale, whenever he bent down to work, they laughed, comparing him to weeds. The relentless daily bullying slowly pushed him to a very dark place. He seriously considered ending his life, utterly crushed by the constant despair. But right at his lowest point, a genuine miracle saved him. Lady Pinacua appeared, thanking him for his loyalty and naming him ruler. She rewarded him with the legendary Earth Dragon martial arts style. This divine technique changed his destiny, and overflowing with immense gratitude, he swore a solemn oath to never forget Lady Pinacua's divine mercy, promising to protect and serve the Sixth Garden until his very last breath. From that day on, he devoted his entire existence to his training. He practiced relentlessly in the Sixth Garden, his strength surging daily, and he finally reached the rank of a mystical celestial. But despite everything he was able to accomplish, his body grew weaker. Only then did he finally understands the secret of the Earth Dragon arts. The effects are incredible, but the power was absorbed by the surrounding medicinal herbs. They drained him completely. He ended up as a living fertilizer without even realizing it, only discovering his tragic fate when his life was already running out. Brian had only seen insane stories like this on television before, making it hard to believe that even celestials would do something so horrifying. Yet Brown Bear believes that this whole situation is completely normal. The Beast calmly explains that this is just standard practice. Celestials do this to maintain their own comfort. Brian is terrified now, refusing to end up like that poor Foxdale. He refuses to let himself be sacrificed like cattle. If someone actually managed to shatter the barrier he built with his own life and blood, then there is no question that they are incredibly strong. Park only hopes that Brian's group has enough power to burn down the pavilion and that his loyal followers will stand beside him. They must guard the hidden treasures, protecting them at the cost of their own lives. He likely means those strange artifacts lying next to his final written will. These are the seeds of the Mandrake Mountain that grew over the deep ocean, also known as the ghostly screaming ginseng, famous for screeching to steal away a victim's soul. They also discover a container resembling a sacred temple lottery box. This is incredibly bizarre since the voice calling out to him came from this container, not the seed. It actually came from this box. Must he grow this plant like the others? Suddenly, a violent explosion erupts, blasting everyone back several meters. It seems this stubborn item has no intention of sprouting. It must remain in its current form. Its true nature is a mystery. Looking closely, it resembles a sword hilt, though the blade is completely missing. Meanwhile, Lady Pinafore receives some unexpected guests, and her entire staff gathers to give them a proper welcome. The lady is absolutely delighted that such an esteemed guest visited her modest estate. It turns out the revered master of the sanctuary, Mrs. Sandra, came in person. She acknowledges her sudden visit might seem blunt, but she prefers to get straight to the urgent matters at hand. Word has already reached her that inside this grand palace lies an invaluable treasure. That is exactly why she made the journey, determined to reclaim the property lost during that scandal 100 years ago. This fabled treasure is the legendary hilt of the seven-pointed sword. That is why the sanctuary master is standing here today. She wants her rightful property back. Now, regarding the seven-pointed sword, it was a highly bizarre and unique artifact. The very same could be said about the nation where it was forged, a state that realistically should never have existed. Among the three great states, only this one lacked the vital strength to survive. They called it a machine established by a mysterious, yet powerful sovereign. Historically, one of these rival states was founded by the son of a Pinocchio lady, backed by the deep blessings of the ancient spirits and ancestors of the Korean peninsula. Yet, that great ruler founded the state of Pecky through sheer human effort, entirely without divine aid. He awakened his earthly foundation and mastered the element of gold later in life, a rare genius. Thanks to him, the Pesh reached its absolute prime, but over time, his successors rulers grew weak. The state began to fall, erasing the legendary king's traces. Soon, everything vanished. Only a single person resembled him, because this man was a complete genius like the king. He was the prince, and this sword was a rare artifact he crafted, hidden away on a remote archipelago. Lady Pinocchio believed this hilt was meant to be passed down with the blade, and everyone knew this secret. But back then, the ambassador bringing the legendary blade met a terrible fate and died in a terrible maritime disaster. They eventually found his sunken vessel soon after, but discovered only the blade without any hilt. In other words, the master of the sanctuary insists the sword must have a hilt. Lady Pinocchio finds this odd, as if they only recently realized the hilt's very existence, so she demands to know why Miss Sandra is interrogating everyone about this artifact. Sandra answers that she didn't travel all this way just to ask stupid questions. She is here for a sanctuary challenge, a massive celestial battle in 6 months. This duel is their peaceful way to resolve the conflict. They will fight for the seven-pointed blade, and if the shrine wins, they will take the hilt from the temple of Lady Pinequa. Of course, Sandra promises total silence about what she saw. If the hilt is returned, the lady will agree, but she has one crucial, non-negotiable condition of her own. Whatever they decided, let's fast forward 6 months into the future. Rumors say this celestial battle will be broadcast live for all. In fact, Lady Pinequa herself wanted to show the fight to the entire world. Right now, some envoys have arrived at the 6th garden to check his progress. Their boss told them to behave calmly, but as the gates open, they see a paradise, a lush paradise. 6 months ago, this was a completely barren desert. The transformation is unreal. Brian personally welcomes his guests, calmly reading under the fruit trees. They hate his attitude, sitting there lounging like a king eating melon. Instead of greeting them properly, they demand at least some respect. And Brian has no problem giving it. He stands right up, walks over and casually introduces himself as the master of the 6th garden. A young warrior named Lee steps forward to greet him, stating he came to inspect his overall progress. Brian isn't having it. Why respect them like older brothers? He makes it clear he has zero interest in playing nice. Suddenly, they freeze in absolute shock as his massive, overwhelming level of celestial power is fully revealed. He has officially reached the tier of a celestial deity. Incredible. Naturally, they hurry to obey his orders. Lee then mentions the battle, where 2 elite fighters from every rank will face the Japanese team. Brian has absolutely no clue, as he never leaves his garden. He is completely isolated here. Lee reveals that he is also fighting. During the Korean War, he built an incredibly solid spiritual foundation through sheer, traumatic shock. losing his entire family in an explosion. Later, he joined the pavilion. He is an exceptionally talented young fighter, glowing with incredible energy and happiness. This upcoming showdown is about to get absolutely wild. Meeting the master, even though Brian doesn't trust other Celestials, this guy seems different. He seems kind and honest enough. Lee also mentions a guy named Paul, rumored to be a legendary Celestial soon. People even whisper that he is a blood relative of Lady Piniqua's son. King Daniel himself, the young warrior, is thrilled to compete in this match with talented Paul. The Sacred Sanctuary already accepted Lady Piniqua's offer long ago, and the locals highly support them because the Sacred Sanctuary has already taken out several dangerous monsters. If you help ordinary folks with their everyday problems, gaining their fierce loyalty is easy. It works every time. This is exactly what the young disciple of immortal Donald, Ruth, does by constantly hunting down monsters in the city. Soon, an assistant approaches Lady Piniqua to report that the ruler of the Sixth Garden wants to see her. She remembers his arrogant attitude, so he can wait. But it turns out Brian is already here to push the issue. Personally challenge Paul, that powerful celestial deity, and Paul immediately steps up, saying he sees absolutely nothing wrong with a little fight. Right then Helen speaks up. She has already heard the rumors that Paul is deliberately holding back his rank because he fears fighting stronger opponents. If he hates those rumors, then fight Brian. Lady Piniqua completely agrees with Helen's sharp words. But can Paul actually defeat the Lord of the Sixth Garden? It feels unlikely. He looks incredibly motivated and angry, yelling that he is ready to fight. Soon, Lady Piniqua's family gathers in full force to watch their relative clash. Of course, plenty of servants and lords from other gardens arrive too. And this showdown draws a massive crowd. The Lord of the Sixth Garden, Brian, looks completely calm and relaxed as always, but Lady Piniqua's relative, Paul, is on the other hand absolutely shaking with pure aggressive rage. He glares at his opponent, warning that he will show him no mercy whatsoever. It really looks like he wants to destroy the owner of the Sixth Garden. Today, even though this is supposed to be a friendly match, Brian knows his rival's blinding anger gives him a massive psychological advantage. It will totally throw him off balance. Soon, the legendary duel between these two powerful Celestials will officially begin, and it promises to be intense. Paul is definitely not the type to waste any time playing defense. His entire style is pure offense from the very start. Brian knows he must remain incredibly sharp and fully focused. If he plays his cards right, he will win. He has made massive progress over the last 6 months training in the Sixth Garden. He easily blocks his opponent's first strike, though it is tough because Paul is pretty serious. Paul truly believed nobody could block his charge with a simple shield of plants, but Brian pulled it off. Now Paul is absolutely furious and vows that Brian will lose his precious gear forever, along with any hope of a peaceful life. It seems like Paul has prepared something incredibly lethal for this match. He is totally convinced that Brian will die, forcing Lady Piniqua to find herself a new master of the Sixth Garden. During all that pointless chatter, Brian's weapon had plenty of time to fully recharge. Now he is finally ready to unleash his devastating solar wind execution skill. This destructive technique taps into the second star's song art once more. He unleashes the blinding solar exposure, aiming its immense power directly at the floor. No doubt this talented young artist has never faced such raw, overwhelming power. Suddenly, he realizes that Brian has been keeping up a highly unusual defense. It is a passive barrier that actively siphons and absorbs his opponent's strength. This intense assault is so devastating that an outside force must step in. Christopher separates the brothers, explaining they must halt this fierce duel immediately. They cannot risk losing such a gifted child. The victor is already obvious. And just like that, Christopher halts the match. Naturally, Paul refuses to accept this ruling, screaming that he is ready to keep fighting. But Christopher stands firm, turning to tell Lady Pinafore his final decision. He firmly declares Brian the winner, though it stings to admit it. She simply cannot disobey the decree of such a highly seasoned master. The ruler of the Sixth Garden is stunned that Lady Pinafore conceded her nephew's defeat so easily. He stares intently at Christopher, unable to understand who he is and why she respects him so much. Later, he meets with Lady Pinafore privately, and she asks about his progress. He has been training hard for 6 months, and her stress is mounting. His rapid growth is overwhelming, yet she cannot help but admire it. He attributes his speedy development to the incredible rarity of his wood element. He also completely understands that his true role is to foster and grow life. And he is fully prepared to start right now. He promises Lady Pinafore that with her complete trust, he will never betray her, a bold claim. She advises him to focus on the tournament and promises to think. Though he wants to ask more, she tells him to rest. The conversation ends there. Sometime later, Lady Pinafore offers to find Brian a companion for walks. He does not mind the gesture. But he never expected Christopher to be the one joining him. They finally have time to talk, and Christopher shares his background. Brian notices that compared to their first tense encounter, Christopher seems remarkably gentle now. Regardless, he is just happy to go out. Brian is thrilled to finally take a relaxing walk. Soon, they spot a nearby shop serving up delicious cocktails and decide to try them. Just normal young men taking a break, a rare sight for cultivators. Even though Christopher has heard countless wild rumors about the mortal realm, he never expected it to be this fascinating. Word has it that senior Celestials constantly intervene, but he rarely does. When he originally died as a mortal, Lady Pinafore facilitated his ascension. Yet he never realized this would banish him from humanity forever. He wanted to leave an eternal legacy behind, but those were childhood dreams. Stuck in the celestial realm, he always regretted what he left unfinished, constantly obsessing over all the earthly things he never completed. Ultimately, he remained a minor ruler of the past. He softly thanks Brian. He was grateful for the company in the human world. It was a fantastic walk. But while they enjoyed the beautiful weather, they spotted a group of people protesting. These crowds believed human sacrifice was an absolute horror, a total catastrophe. And they refused to turn a blind eye to the tragedy. To them, sacrificing innocence is straight-up murder, and only a psychopath would defend it. Now, the angry protesters demanded the Celestial Lords respect their human rights. They were fully prepared to stand up to anyone, even the Dragon King himself. Listening to the chants, Christopher could not believe this nation's ruler was killing citizens. How could a leader like that even exist in this day and age? Convinced it was a massive misunderstanding, he urged Brian to quickly investigate the matter. But their debate was cut short by a sudden, terrifying event. An unexpected solar eclipse blocked out the sun, catching them off guard. It was not clear what was going on, but the protesters were in serious danger. There was no time to think. Brian had to act before tragedy struck. Within seconds, an ambush began, and it was hard to tell who was attacking. Maybe the ruler sent his personal soldiers to silence the crowd once and for all. Clearly fed up with the chaos, they chose to end things violently. Reacting in a flash, Brian activated his ancient artifact to shield the innocent. He went on the offensive, striking back hard, but the enemies kept coming. Even with his godlike speed, he realized he could not protect everyone at once. His opponents were far stronger and more organized than he originally anticipated. They moved with deadly, flawless coordination, working together like a highly trained elite military unit. This only fueled Brian's rage, making him hate these killers just as much as monsters. Just as he prepared to strike again, he sensed a massive threat from above. At the very last second, he barely managed to dodge a giant falling boulder. Stepping out from the dust was the bandit leader, a fierce woman named Betty. She smiled, clearly not expecting to run into the legendary Brian in a place like this. Knowing he was an otherworldly traveler, she wanted to end his life. But Brian immediately felt the crushing wave of dark energy radiating from her. He recognized that sinister aura. She was a patron of the Heavenly Wolf King. It was unmistakable, matching the foul yin energy he felt back when the statue exploded. Betty did not even try to hide her bloodlust as she locked eyes with him. It turned out she was incredibly close with George, meaning this was a personal vendetta. She swore to make Brian suffer for his sins, no matter what it took. Hearing her talk about his so-called evil deeds only made Brian chuckle. He always strived to do the right thing, yet she painted him as the villain. But Brian was not about to back down. He did not care who stood in his way. If he believed he was fighting for what was right, he would stand his ground forever. That absolute self-confidence was his greatest weapon. He bowed to no authority. Betty was clearly well prepared and smug, but Brian merely scoffed at her arrogance. He warned her to stop playing games because she was the one who would pay for her sins today. With a swift gesture, Brian summoned an entire army of mystical wooden warriors to his side. This brand new technique completely changed the tide, making a crowd of enemies look like nothing. And just like that, Betty's confident smirk completely vanished into thin air. She watched in horror as her own men began to buckle under the overwhelming pressure. "Those wooden warriors," she instantly screams out, ordering her minions to get back up immediately. Suddenly, ghostly goblins materialize out of thin air, looking almost half imaginary. These malicious spirits are incredibly wicked, making it tough to take down when they swarm like a massive wave of ants. Lucky for Brian, he picked up a small smoking pipe from the shop earlier, though he never really planned on putting it to use right now, yet within moments. He inhales a bit of smoke, triggering the active mandrake compounds. His focus sharpens. Suddenly, his reflexes hit their absolute peak, performance supercharging his muscles. Furious, he vows that not a single enemy will survive his wrath today. Honestly, it is so satisfying to watch his insane growth, especially since he could barely fight like this 6 months ago. But today, we can practically feel his raw power and battle experience taking over. Since this is far from his first rodeo, even so, Betty just smiles, claiming that summoning a few extra wooden puppets will not change a thing. She truly believes these creatures are about as threatening as toothpicks, meaning her crew has absolutely nothing to fear. She barks orders to her subordinates, demanding they summon even more demons to crush the opposition. For a moment, they seem to hold the upper hand in this clash, but suddenly, everything goes completely sideways. Out of nowhere, a sinister, dark energy begins to tear right through them. Bandits are suddenly coughing up blood and gasping for air. Several are paralyzed, unable to move, while others hear terrifying whispers echoing inside their minds. Even Betty is left completely baffled, despite holding all the cards just seconds ago. Brian immediately dashes toward her to check on her condition, despite their rivalry. The thick mist floating around does not affect him whatsoever, because his liver instantly detoxifies the poison, extracting only the beneficial nutrients. This incredible immunity is entirely thanks to the unique mandrake compounds inside his body. But for his unfortunate enemies, the very same mist is a lethal poison. The second-hand effects are utterly devastating, giving Betty a lesson she will never forget. In fact, looking at her right now, it is highly doubtful she will even survive to see another sunrise. But as always, this girl keeps a deadly card up her sleeve, ready to play her absolute best move when pushed to the edge. Pushed to the very brink of death, she desperately summons her father. Yet it quickly becomes clear that nobody on this battlefield can match the warrior known as Christopher. Even Brian is completely stunned by his overwhelming power, doubting if Christopher might actually surpass the great wolf king of heaven. What is even crazier is discovering that Betty is his actual daughter. Not just a mere disciple like everyone believed. Christopher coldly declares that he does not care about the Wolf King, only that the beast has committed too many sins. The heavenly Wolf King merely laughs at the threat, mockingly saying he won't be taken down so easily. He warns everyone to listen very carefully before he slaughters these weaklings and drags their souls straight to hell. Thanks to Christopher's foolish arrogance, he will slaughter everyone here and wage a total war. Suddenly, this monstrous entity begins actively draining the life force, consuming not just the fallen corpses, but the living souls around him. Brian stands frozen, completely unable to comprehend what is wrong with this warrior. Why does he keep tormenting innocent people and causing pure chaos? It is clear that he is incredibly powerful, wielding some truly bizarre, dark techniques. Even Brian is starting to panic, completely clueless on how to stop this tyrant. He begins considering the power of his nine-tailed fox artifact. He's not sure if it will work, but there is no other way out. Just then Christopher approaches him, calmly asking to borrow his sword, recognizing this dangerous warrior's insane potential. Brian decides to take a leap of faith. Now let us finally see what he is truly made of, because before this it was just talk. His very first strike forces everyone to respect his deadly martial arts. Brian never expected his new ally to be such a fierce and skilled warrior. Technically, Christopher has no authority to execute a fellow Celestial, regardless of how many innocents he has harmed. But when considering what the Skywolf did to his own subjects, the rules completely change. As a Celestial himself, Christopher is fully prepared to take responsibility and Deliver the ultimate punishment, totally unconcerned about the potential consequences. He is ready to risk it all. Honestly, it is almost impossible to believe that he brought down the mighty heavenly wolf king this fast. It looks incredibly brutal, but sometimes justice has to be ruthless to defeat evil. Being too soft only guarantees failure when the stakes are this high. Fortunately, the rapid intervention of the celestial authorities helps round up all the remaining terrorists. Now, the task of identifying the victims begins. Naturally, the public is growing extremely furious with how things were handled. The shocking news quickly spreads across the entire island like wildfire. People are especially angry at the Celestials for responding way too slowly. Soon, leaked footage of the chaotic battle is uploaded to the internet. Now the public can finally see who the real heroes actually are. If you look closely at the video, a very familiar face stands out. Viewers quickly recognize the legendary young man from a year and a half ago. The one who rode a massive bird through the city center to save a woman. This broadcast completely outrages Lady Pinakoa, who barks orders to turn off the television. Christopher knows he has caused a massive headache and he feels terrible. He does not even possess the official credentials to prove he is a proper celestial. He is technically unauthorized to act in their name. Descending to the human realm to interfere was a massive, highly illegal mistake. While he is ready for her wrath, she is currently focused entirely on Brian. She cannot comprehend how, after all his blunders, Brian can still look her in the eye. Brian quickly bows his head, desperately apologizing for his reckless behavior. To their surprise, the lady does not flat out condemn Christopher's intervention, though she sternly warns him to be far more careful moving forward. Then, she glares back at Brian, telling him to prepare for severe disciplinary action. Once the tense lecture concludes, both of them are finally dismissed. Brian immediately heads back to his sixth garden, feeling like he has been gone for ages. At last, he can test out the mysterious item he secured during his clash. With Betty and her fierce bandit crew, he definitely did not expect what comes next. Who hides ancient books inside a giant statue? There has to be some serious power here. It seems to be about the great sage, a legendary figure who earned his title after death. A simple, small-town kid from a minor family who ended up doing the impossible. He suppressed the massive energy of the mountain to build his own kingdom right next to it. And the one who wrote these records is undoubtedly the great sage king himself. Brian figures this all out on his own, without any help from his bear companion. The text says the sage knew his time was running out. Yet he feared absolutely nothing. His only real worry was a heartbreaking premonition. The terrible thought that his own son would be the first to die. He would have to watch it happen with his own eyes, helpless to stop his child from wasting away. Watching him grow weaker and thinner every passing day, then the text shifts to the past. He reads about countless humans who sacrificed their very lives to serve the greedy gods. Before the dark era of celestials, ruling over humanity returns once more. Ordinary people who have not awakened their inner divine power must somehow find a way to get stronger. They will need true courage to stand and fight against the godlike celestials. On a far-off island, there are special characters called runes that hold incredible, untapped potential. And spoken correctly, they read like legendary poetry backed by a massive wave of raw power. It seems the king wanted to manifest pure strength using a language of the ancient oracles. The king's brilliant intellect was famous even among gods who feared his immense potential. Had he lived just 100 years longer, he might have successfully overthrown them. Now, anyone who can read and write can learn to unlock this legendary runic power. The king's dying wish was to keep these 28 sacred symbols alive for future generations. He prayed that his legacy would live on, and now, that beautiful dream might finally come true. The future the late king dreamed of has finally arrived. These mysterious, powerful books have fallen right into the hands of a highly talented boy. Now let's see what he can do. He immediately begins practicing to master the ancient text. He is completely shocked when he witnesses the true, destructive power of his new technique. Its massive potential leaves him breathless. It all comes down to the words themselves. A primal power imprisoned within simple sounds and spoken words. The trick is pronouncing the runes exactly as the ancient instructions dictate. If you can visualize the rune clearly in your mind while speaking it, the magic activates. The moment Brian speaks the word for fire in the ancient tongue, his world changes. A brilliant, roaring flame instantly bursts to life right in front of him. Look at that, Brian is stepping into a whole new tier of power. If he can master this properly, he will become completely unstoppable. Meanwhile, his giant brown bear companion is fast asleep. Gwanak was resting peacefully, but a strange crackling noise nearby suddenly wakes him up. He stares in utter confusion, wondering why Brian is trying to burn everything in sight. It honestly looks like the kid can't even start a normal campfire without a bear helping him. Amused, Gwanak decides to mess with him a bit, but Brian is way too focused. He admits he got a little carried away, but he must avoid burning down the forest. During his wild testing, the young boy notices something incredibly interesting. The louder he screams the command, the larger and hotter the flames erupt. He needs to shout the word with absolute authority if he wants to unleash its full potential. It seems the volume of his voice directly scales the destructive power of the spell. The more he speaks, the stronger the spell gets, theoretically at least. It is just a wild theory in Brian's head, something to prove later. Maybe a whole sentence would trigger a way bigger reaction than a word. Wondering if a long phrase could actually unleash some truly massive power. So he raises his hands, dramatically begging the heavens for a straight answer. Unsurprisingly, the sky stays dead silent. He is so busy playing the fool that he completely misses his unexpected guest. It is Carol, the legendary wilted flower. He has not seen this Sura beauty in person for a very long time. Instant panic, cold sweat breaks out as he realizes she saw his performance. She was probably standing there, watching him act like a total idiot. But then things get hilariously weird. She raises her hands to the sky too, joining in on his weird prayer. Honestly, these two deserve each other. They are a perfect pair of absolute weirdos, she laughs and tells him not to worry, saying it is totally normal to let loose sometimes. When she flashes that bright, genuine smile, everything else just fades away. Brian instantly gets flustered, completely losing his cool over her sweet words. Is this actual romance blooming? Either way, he needs to change the subject. So he finally asks why she dropped by. Carol reveals some big news. She heard he is entering the intense, heavenly battle. Word of his rapid climb through the tower floors is spreading fast. Turns out she's also signing up for this epic heavenly battle. She was training outside to prepare and understand the competition better. But during her prep, she found something meant for him. Apparently her job was to watch over him, though she skipped that entirely. Not that he needs a babysitter anymore. She hands over a mysterious book. He is allowed to read it now that he is in the tournament. Confused, Brian has absolutely no idea what to make of it. He asks who sent this gift, and the answer stuns him. Carol calmly reveals that the book actually came from his own father. Brian instantly starts shaking with pure rage. He glares at her, demanding to know what kind of deadbeat dares to call himself his father. Long ago, a divine ruler descended from heaven to a sacred mountain. He gave magical garlic and root to a bear and tiger wanting humanity. The tiger chickened out and fled, but the patient bear stayed in the cave. She successfully transformed into a human woman named Karen, starting a new legacy. This legendary tale is incredibly popular among the common folk. But the scandalous truth is that Karen was never actually his official wife. As for Brian's father, he is currently married to a royal princess. He lives comfortably in the neighboring city of Shenfu with his royal wife. Carol had just finished her business there and was preparing to leave when his father approached her, warning that chaos was coming soon. He wrote down vital information inside this specific notebook. That was his final message. Brian is left utterly stunned. He always assumed his father abandoned them and ran away, squandering their fortune on himself, leaving them with mountain of debt, transferred directly to his mother and grandmother. Even so, his father refused to take any blame, and soon after his grandmother passed away. Now, it is quite clear he probably already found a brand new family. Nobody knows how they even accepted him, but he is officially tied to an extremely powerful figure now, making his old life completely worthless. Turns out, he left behind more than just scriptures. He passed down a sacred object. Brian opened the wooden box, finding a beautifully sealed mystical bamboo fan. The scriptures, shaped like a fan, was crafted to easily hunt down demonic beasts and wicked spirits. Typically, a 24-plate fan is considered top-tier quality, and the more plates it has, the better the fan is, but this beast has 72 plates. No one really knows why his father gifted him something so legendary. This divine fan easily has Enough capacity to swallow up countless dark spirits. Of course, Brian immediately decided. To wield it, only a total fool would reject a treasure like this. But he started reassuring Carol so intensely about always keeping it close that it actually came off as pretty suspicious. Luckily, he got a guide to master it, since a newbie would struggle with such complex techniques. Over the next few weeks, Brian trained relentlessly to sharpen his skills. Then out of nowhere, an unexpected visitor appeared in his garden right away. He recognized Christopher. He admired the stunning view, thanking Brian for turning this wasteland into a paradise. No more games. Christopher is finally here to talk some serious business. He wants Brian to help him craft a legendary flute of peace. Though history claims it appeared after the factions united, in truth, its creation goes back much further, to an ancient, completely forgotten era. Back then, humanity thrived in harmony without any grand masters interfering. But with no sages around, the dragons of the three seas suddenly struck, unleashing a brutal war that would have wiped out millions of people. To end the bloodshed, all three nations finally united, creating a supreme weapon specifically designed to tame dragons, the flute. Because this instrument had terrifying raw power, strict rules were placed on it. First, it could never be imported into the country. Second, it could never be turned against their own people. Later, it was hidden in the forest, guarded near the territory of the absolute Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. But today, its location remains a mystery, so Christopher wants to build a brand new instrument, and he needs help from Brian to gather the necessary materials. As the Lord of the Sixth Garden, Brian is the only one who can. With the heavenly war looming, the protective barriers of the garden will weaken soon, giving Christopher the perfect chance to seize the Black Jade Bowl. But even if they succeed, the suspicious Pinafore lady will be watching. Plus, they risk triggering a massive war with the dragons, who will stop at nothing to shatter the new flute. Yet Christopher is fully prepared to shoulder the consequences alone. Honestly, his resolve likely stems from witnessing the desperate protests of innocent citizens in the past. Back then, he watched in horror as the leader of the nation slaughtered his own people. That tragedy changed him forever, proving he is nothing like those corrupt rulers. And that is exactly why Brian is ready to help him. He is a man of the people. Honestly, knowing there are souls like Christopher out there makes him genuinely happy. Still, Brian has doubts. Can he really be useful to someone so incredibly wise? Christopher just laughs. He completely brushes off those silly worries right away. He knew his buddy would never leave him hanging, a true friend through and through. But first, they need to track down a very specific tree to craft the perfect flute. No time to waste. The duo immediately set off on their urgent search. They cannot afford a single mistake, or the flute loses its special magical qualities. Suddenly, Brian gasps. Floating in the distance is a massive, majestic island. He had absolutely no clue they could access this place through the dump door. But Christopher explains, apparently this realm is actually a special pavilion for ladies. By interacting with the core formula, anyone can easily access this hidden dimension. A majestic horse suddenly materializes out of nowhere right before their eyes. Christopher was definitely expecting this. Meet Garmy, his highly reliable magical steed. Grab my hand, Christopher urgently commands his buddy right this second. Instantly, a battle uniform wraps around his body as they mount up together. They gallop off. Christopher tells his friend there is nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing for him to worry about. But those are just words. In reality, trouble is already on their heels. A school of monstrous, giant fish is chasing them down at high speed. We are talking massive sharks, a giant octopus, and even a colossal crab. These beasts block the path. Christopher cannot land on the island safely. Go alone, he urges Brian to trust him and find that special tree. It is clear this island is crawling with deadly monsters. This will be fun. Time for a boost. Brian decides to smoke some of that magic mandrake again. The potent herb instantly flows through his system, supercharging his senses. While Christopher keeps the beasts busy, Brian must finish his hunt quickly. Right away, he senses an incredibly bizarre aura radiating from two spots nearby. It would be amazing to find a legendary jade bowl hidden in those areas. But to find it, he needs total focus. The surrounding beasts are terrifying. These are definitely not your typical woodland wolves and foxes, not even close. They are massive, mutated predators, and some even possess crazy, celestial-level power. Against such overwhelming strength, our guy is at a severe disadvantage. Night is falling fast. The beasts around him seem to grow larger by the minute. Brian realizes that smoking more mandrake won't save him here. He needs a new plan. The monsters won't wait. They are going to attack right now. They lunge. Luckily, he still has a special gift from his father. And it is the perfect weapon to unleash in this critical moment. His strike is blindingly fast, cutting down hordes of reptilian beasts easily. But guess what? Things are about to get even wilder. Brian decides to summon a completely different, highly unexpected ally to the field. He has been keeping a guanaco with him this entire time. It is finally time to unleash its hidden power in this desperate hour. He commands the brown beast to transform and crush these scaly pests. Brian watches with absolute satisfaction as his massive summon tears the reptiles apart. He is not called the legendary mountain fire deity for nothing. But this form is far from his true appearance. First, we need to talk about Mount Guanac itself. It features a jagged peak shaped like a blazing fire, which classifies it as a volcano. Long ago, the ancestors believed destructive fires would easily break out in the nearby capital, so to suppress the heat, they dug a deep pond and placed a bronze statue at the very summit. For hundreds of years, it sealed the energy of Mount Guanac. Suddenly, a massive reptile begins fleeing, naturally heading straight toward a place overflowing with powerful energy. Besides, that black jade bowl is draining most of the island. Nutrients, the brown bear and Brian quickly follow the fleeing beasts. They trace the path of those ugly creatures. Before long, Brian finally spots his target, the mysterious black jade bowl. Meanwhile, the bear demands to be set down on the ground, eager to roast these annoying pests. Rats, it is always a treat to watch humans and beasts teaming up. Honestly, their synergy is absolutely lethal. At times like this, you realize Guanac is truly a formidable deity, but when he changes his form, he looks like a harmless, fluffy toy. Approaching the jade bowl, he suddenly senses trouble with his flame. The bear starts to panic, screaming for Brian to hurry over and rescue him. Naturally, the noble ruler of the Sixth Garden, Lady Pinafore, never abandons a friend in a tight spot. He swiftly unleashes his strength, successfully pulling the brown bear back. Getting closer, they see a Hedu puppy waiting right there, a bright blue dog with unique facial markings. Brian curiously wonders how many of these odd creatures are lurking around. The bear warns him that they are incredibly foul beasts. Apparently, it is common for someone with a divine beast form to act as their tamer. But the bear could only watch helplessly as his own energy was completely sealed by this annoying little pest. Looking down at the Hedu, the bear notes that this child is already 200 years old. Pretty weird to still call him a kid. At his age, he should be out exploring the world, but since he is totally helpless against modern technology, he clearly lacks basic education. Brian just grins, promising the bear that everything will turn out fine. Instantly, the bear panics because he realizes exactly what the boy is planning, but it is already too late. Armed with a new fan, the boy activates a bizarre new technique. Within seconds, both the Hedu dog and the brown bear find themselves sucked inside the fan, trapped like ordinary spirits, landing inside. They finally face each other. Unsurprisingly, their introduction goes terribly because, despite the massive size difference, the tiny Hedu leaps to attack the giant bear. Watching this, Brian cheerfully tells them they are a perfect match for each other. With that settled, he gathers up his gear, ready to move forward. Once the job is done, he and Christopher head back to the pavilion. The mission seems like a total success, but Brian suddenly notices his friend is badly hurt. Christopher quickly reassures the worried teen, insisting that with some solid rest, the wound will heal fast. He urges him not to worry about it, mentioning that he actually has a special gift for the brothers. Call it a fair trade. Brian worked hard for this, and honestly, he earned it. Turns out twin dragons guard this garden, making things way more complicated than expected. The guy initially wanted to keep the treasure, but eventually realized he must hand it over. He handed the dragon pearl to Brian, asking everyone not to make a scene about it. To him, this is a fair reward, regardless of his intentions. It is time to forget his godmother's kindness, but a massive risk remains. If these two actually pull off their crazy plan and forge that flute, trouble is coming. Facing Lady Pinakwa's fury is inevitable. Brian decides to help his friend. Helping him out, Brian promises to grow stronger very soon. Soon he hopes to call Christopher brother without feeling any shame at all. Meanwhile, the live broadcast for the championship tournament is about to kick off. The venue is a remote island in the Eastern Sea. Just look at these fighters. Their intense focus before the match even starts shows just how ready they are. Every single competitor is locked in for an absolute war. They are prepared to risk everything on the line to claim victory. This year, the rules are different. It is a King of the Hill format. The winner stays to face the next challenger. Christopher looks incredibly confident. He hides his severe injuries perfectly, showing absolutely zero signs of weakness. Before things begin, sage representatives from every nation pay their respects. They send formal greetings directly to the legendary Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. With these gestures, they hope the giant beast approves of their presence. After all, hosting a violent tournament right in his sacred domain is extremely risky. Some call it a literal sacrifice, but the tournament setup marches on regardless. Next, the mages begin temporarily solidifying the water to form an arena. Instantly, the temperature between the two islands skyrockets to an insane degree. You will never see this in real life. It is pure ancestral magic at work. Meanwhile, foreign observers representing different factions arrive on the coast. They are here to guarantee absolute fairness and oversee the entire trial. Each group brought a top official to enforce terms. These guys will be watching everything like hawks, keeping the peace. They swear on their lives to guard Lady Pinakwa's vast treasures. Alongside them stands an official spokesperson, acting as the ultimate authority. His job is to judge with absolute, unwavering honesty throughout the games. Until a champion is crowned, they must guard the 7 sacred swords. Right then, Brian runs into a massive problem, a strange resonance. That artifact he grabbed from the 6th Garden Ruler's mansion, it starts vibrating. It reacts to something powerful, specifically to the 7-headed sword, because the hilt shares the exact same energy. Panicking, Brian immediately grips the hilt, trying desperately to suppress the power. He hides it in his pocket, hoping nobody notices the chaotic aura. The gears are already turning, and the ultimate match is starting. An opponent apologizes for his weapon's wild behavior, explaining it gets hyperactive around rivals. Still, he privately admits this reaction is incredibly bizarre. Even for a legendary blade, acting up like this is totally unprecedented. Since the blade currently has no master, this chaotic reaction makes zero sense. To match a swordsman's divine power, his spirit level has to be pretty damn high. Brian couldn't take his eyes off the sword, feeling some strange, sudden connection with it. It was a legendary broken blade, known to many as the Weapon Destroyer. It got that name because its grip is so strong, no other blade can withstand it. Even among the Valhalla ancestors, he was a legend with unmatched physical fighting power. Warriors like him are incredibly rare, a completely different breed of fighter. They call him a Beowulf. If it weren't for his direct will, the hilt itself would have already leaped right out of the treasure chest, vibrating like crazy. It was all because of its intense resonance with the blade. And the secret lay in the fact that Brian held the hilt of the 7 swords. Up first is our old friend, a warrior named Lei, who faces a tough opponent. Named Ahmed, a fighter who is highly trained and absolutely no joke. Since they are close friends now, Brian is definitely rooting for him today. Helen happens to be sitting right next to Brian, calling the whole thing a massive pity. Brian remembers her as a family member from when he first joined his current class. She quietly tells him to just watch the match and see the truth for himself. Explaining things that should be obvious is something she absolutely hates. Her talk about pity is confusing, but Brian is about to find out why. Out in the arena, Ahmed is already unleashing his combat techniques. He looks incredibly brutal, aggressive, and totally dominant. Lee has to show his absolute best talent to block this onslaught. Thankfully, Lee has enough skills to stand his ground against powerful foes. A lifetime of non-stop training under his belt has made him incredibly strong. Because of that hard work, his skills are insane for his young age. Relying on flawless defense, he easily slips past Ahmed's strikes. Closing the distance incredibly fast, he clearly makes Ahmed nervous. Ahmed expected to dominate this first round. But don't count him out yet, this fight is just getting started. The guy is ready to unleash his real power, but then everything goes wrong. Suddenly, Brian sees blood spraying everywhere, his heart stopping in pure shock. In pure combat instinct, Lee is miles ahead of his Japanese rival. But that rival's strength is spiking way too fast. likely using some hidden tools. Meanwhile, their master has always been a traveler, who is always leaving, only to return when he feels like it. Helen cannot understand why he took a student without passing down any Dharma weapons. This match is a proxy war, testing the power of Korean and Japanese ancestors. It is a clash watched by the entire world. Lady Panakwa wanted to use this victory to restore her clan's ancient influence by crushing their Japanese rivals once and for all. Though Lee was originally just an assistant, he stands zero chance in this arena. Yet right when everyone thinks it is over, something unexpected happens. It turns out this incredibly stubborn warrior is refusing to accept defeat. Even after blacking out from that brutal hit, he somehow keeps standing. Still, there is no denying he is in critical condition right now. The damage Ahmed dealt is severe, but he is still not backing down. Does this mean the Korean Celestial actually lost the first fight? It seems so. It is pretty clear he completely lacks the massive, destructive offensive techniques of his opponent. But the guy knows he cannot just go down without a proper fight. He has got some real grit and will gladly bleed for this, while Ahmed just smirks. He thinks his opponent is just wasting time because there are levels to this. When your opponent is on a completely different tier, stopping them becomes an impossible task. Sure, young Master Lee has some pretty incredible raw potential and spirit. But right now, he is just not ready to face the real masters of the game. His defense looked pretty solid at first, but then things started going downhill. He ran into some serious endurance issues. He has a massive heart and tried to fight, but his body gave out. Just like that, the Japanese delegation takes the win for this first round. Now Lee actually has to be carried completely off the field by the medical team. Helen tells Brian he should actually be happy about how this turned out. It is the absolute perfect chance for him to really steal the whole spotlight now. She looks at him, saying he just needs to last longer than Lee did. If he wins quickly and makes it look easy, he will definitely stand out even more. Brian pauses before quietly telling her that he will do his absolute best. In fact, he guarantees she will not even be able to compare to him. The guy is completely certain he is going to win and prove he is the best. Helen almost laughs at his confidence, but then she stops herself. He is insanely sure of himself. Maybe he actually has the power. Brian is up next, and plenty of people in the crowd already know his name. He is the guy who famously took out Lady Panako's favorite beast. And honestly, who wouldn't want to see what this kid is capable of? The rules say he has to face the winner of the last match. That means he is up against Ahmed, who is currently wearing a very smug grin. Ahmed expects an easy victory, but he is shocked when Brian does not even defend. No, Brian is here to go on the offensive. Ahmed never saw this coming. He has never faced a charge this insanely fast in his entire life. And just like that, Brian lands a devastating, crushing blow right to his opponent's jaw. It is always incredibly satisfying to watch Brian completely shatter everyone's expectations. People think a self-taught rookie cannot stand against a seasoned pro. But today, Brian is here to completely rewrite the narrative, shocking everyone in the arena. Absolutely nobody understood what just went down. The crowd is totally stunned. Either way, the referee officially declares Brian the winner of this match. He won with an insane lead, leaving everyone completely worried about Ahmed's physical condition. The guy might actually pass out from bleeding. Just like Alighieri did, surprisingly, Carroll is not happy with his fight. He completely ignored his defense and fought way too aggressively. She also cannot figure out how Brian mastered that high-speed movement. Christopher looks over and explains that Brian's master-level potential is basically a bottomless well. When it comes to training, the guy's potential has absolutely no limits. Right now, Brian pops another stimulant, purple acid, calcium, and vitamin D. It boosts his cellular strength and blood flow to keep him going. But the show must go on. He cannot drop his guard. Forget defense and you lose. Now comes a real challenge. A fresh challenger steps up, and she is definitely not here to play nice. She calls forth massive Iron Sentinels from Japan to back her up. It is a smart play to avoid close combat with Brian. His debut terrified them. But fear does not last. She watched him fight previously, studying his moves to craft the perfect counter strategy. Now she is fully convinced that the upper hand belongs to her. She expects a quick victory, making Brian's sudden counterattack a massive shock. He retaliates, proving she is not the only summoner. Brian mastered this art long ago. We have seen these massive wooden puppets wreak havoc before. Whenever things get tight, his loyal creations always have his back. He wants a stylish finish, activating his bizarre song technique. He actually commands his wooden giants to sing a war anthem. It is honestly hard to keep a straight face. Who sings mid-combat, even his own ants are utterly baffled. They have no clue how to react. They are terrible singers, so the wooden puppets just start swinging. They smash forward to their own terrible rhythm, leaving her lost. Her spells are completely useless. Even her newly summoned puppets are instantly crushed by the trees. Brian stands back, thoroughly enjoying how easily this is playing out. He is in absolute control of the entire battle. Can you blame them? Brian just secured another rapid win. He finished the job in a flash, completely bypassing her defenses. For a guy with under 2 years of training, this is wild. To make it crazier, he only used a single technique here. They still have no clue about his true power. This entire tournament is just a publicity stunt for Lady Pinaqua. A sacrificial lamb. But Brian has no intention of playing along with her twisted script. He wants the starring role, now that 2 Japanese celestials have fallen.